Hey guys, this is Frank Hector, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome back to Submission Radio. Dennis Gradov here with Kasper Rosalowski. We're back after a short weekly break, and it's great to be back, Cass.
Oh man, it's awesome. We missed you guys. We missed doing the show. You know, as you know, we do enjoy the winter extreme sports, and we went to the snow, went to Mount Buller, trying to enjoy the last of the snow. It was interesting. It was fun.
What happened, Cass? What happened? Break it down for us. Take us into the moment.
I feel like Daniel Cormier doing like Keys to Victory on Fox Sports. So, well, the sky was angry, my friends. I woke at the crack of dawn. Fast forward, I was going down the mountain, snowboarding, and I'm not like an amazing snowboarder by any means, but you know, I'm okay. I'm still.
You can
learning.
hold your own.
I can hold my yeah. I'm not the Demetrius Johnson of snowboarding, but you know, I'm okay. So I'm going down. It's like 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going down the slopes. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing well. You know, I haven't boarded in a while, but I'm feeling pretty good. And this asshole skier is on the left of me, and I'm thinking like, get away from me, man. So I'm kind of doing my thing, and then. You know, there's this thing called heel side and toe side, depends on like how you're standing on your feet, and I switched to toe side to sort of get away from him, and then before I know it, I feel something on the back of my board. He kind of went over my board, the board caught, and boom, I fell backwards, and I was like livid. I was livid, and you shouldn't get pissed off because really, you can't be pissed off at you know, someone knocking you over on the snow, but I was pissed off. Anyway, whatever, jumped back on my board, didn't make a big fuss out of it. My wrist was hurting a little bit. Anyway, next minute, broken wrist. So I kept boarding for the rest of the day, and on the way back to the accommodation, I was like, you know what, let's stop by the doctor's real quick. A couple x-rays later, and yeah, broken wrist. So here I am, working injured.
That's hero. Right. We will rebuild him. We will make him stronger. $1 million Kasper here on Submission Radio. And for people at home who haven't seen Kasper, he's walking around a little bit for the wrestling fans out there like Bob Orton. He's able to use that cast to our advantage. So whenever Submission Radio gets in any altercations, you can pull out that cast and bang, over the head, Submission Radio wins.
Yeah, I'm not the $6 million man. I'm more like the $600 man with a little bit of change. So, you know, I'll be ready for the big press conference in a couple of weeks when old Dana White comes down to talk UFC 193. But you tuned in for MMA, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We got some sexy guests on our return show. We've got Pat Cummins. He had that fight against OSP. He had that win over Fejao Cavalcante. I want to talk to him about a whole bunch of things. And now he's going to be versing Glover Teixeira. So there's much to talk about with our good friend Pat Cummins, who we miss having on the show. It's been too long.
He's an alumni.
He is. I mean,
he's going to get a ring that he gets to wear in his pinky finger.
Yeah, exactly. I've never been in love, but I feel like what you, me, and Pat Cummins, the three of us have, I think that's the closest I've ever been to love. So Pat Cummins is coming back on the show. David Branch, a new addition to Submission Radio, the World Series of Fighting middleweight champion. He's going to be fighting for the light heavyweight championship for World Series of Fighting. It's very rare that guys get to hold two titles at once. He's going to be doing that at World Series of Fighting 23 on that same card as obviously Luis Palomino and Justin Gaethje, the big sexy rematch. So a whole bunch of things to talk about with David Branch. Then Hector Lombard is returning to the show. You know, he just had his experience at ADCC. He's still currently serving his suspension. I mean, he'll be back in February. There's a few things we want to ask him about. Obviously, he's not going to be fighting at the Melbourne card. We want to get his feelings on that. You know, he's been talking about possibly going to the Olympics. I feel like there's a few things we didn't ask him last time, and I'm wondering how he's going to deal with, you know, going to the Olympics and having the suspension. So there's a lot to talk about. And then, of course, UFC 191. We're going to be breaking down the beast that was UFC 191, talking about the fights and breaking it down. So, yeah, pretty sexy show.
Yeah, that's right. And Hector Lombard, almost a national treasure at this point. So a lot of fun having him on the program. And obviously, as you guys know, Hector's English can be broken sometimes. So, you know, please stick around because he always has interesting stuff. But also, if you haven't had a chance, we love it. We'd love for you to jump on Facebook and like our page. It's facebook.com/Submission Radio AUS. It's where we throw up questions. We want to hear your thoughts, and it's a great place where you can communicate with me and Kasper. And also on the Twitter, you can jump on there at Submission AUS. We throw up our intimate thoughts, ideas, and I guess a bit of the humor, Cass, I'd say. There's some gifs, there's some memes, and if you like it, even a bit of opinion and a bit of banter. So jump on there. We love chatting to you guys through that platform. But without further ado, Cass, we've got our first guest on the show, on the return show of Submission Radio, and you're about to introduce him.
All right, guys, joining us here on Submission Radio is a man who's become an alumni of the show. He's known for his amazing skills in the art of creating healthy pancakes, as well as now being an official top 10 light heavyweight fighter in the UFC. Takes on Glover Teixeira at UFC Fight Night 77. And it's a pleasure to welcome back Pat Cummins to Submission Radio. Pat, how are you?
Yay! Man, I'm excited. I'm excited to do this again. It's been too long.
It has been too long.
I feel like I say that every time.
I know. Well, we've been chatting through Twitter. We've tried to get you on the show. Unfortunately, you were on a boat catching some sushi, catching some fish. Now, tell us about that. Did you catch any monsters? What was going on this boat?
I caught some monsters. Yeah, Dennis knows my fishing skills. He's witnessed it, but he's got some of his own though too.
Of course.
No, we caught a bunch of tuna. It was pretty fun. So the freezer is stocked right now.
Why are you on this boat? Because I watched Deadliest Catch, and these guys seem to go through a lot just to catch these crab. I mean, was this like funds were short, or was this more like, sunny skies and a nice boat and drinking champagne on a boat? Was it that kind of trip?
Yeah, are you selling fish on the side?
Yeah.
I mean, are you moonlighting?
Yeah, first of all, you're saying boat. It's more like a yacht.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's how I. No,
the pinky is raised now.
Puff Daddy was there.
If it was cold, there's no way in hell I'd be doing that.
Oh, well,
it's California. It's summertime in California.
I'll tell you what, man, you wouldn't want to be in Melbourne right now. It's freezing here. We also saw that you were doing a bit of mountain biking, I think with your brother. Now, how did that adventure go down? Any interesting stories from that little whole situation?
You know what? There's too many stories to recount. We actually separately. He lives in Colorado now, and he sent me pictures of how bad he wrecked the other day.
Oh wow!
And it his helmet was had a huge scratch on the side of it, and he was contemplating not wearing a helmet that day too.
Wow.
He's such a dummy. But no, and not too long ago, after my last fight, I went out riding and I hit a tree, which is not. Don't tell anybody I said that, because it's probably a breach of my contract in some way.
Yeah, no kidding. The UFC want you sitting in a jumping castle with elbow pads and a helmet, not doing anything.
Exactly. But no, we always have a good time. I'm always on the mountain bike. Dennis actually has done that with me before too.
Wow. You guys, we say this all the time, but you guys really need your own reality show. I really think you guys could do some big ratings. I want to ask you, though, because we've seen some videos from mountain bikers when they're scaling those tiny, tiny, narrow parts of a cliff. What's scary to you, jumping in the octagon of fighting or mountain biking?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're either really that scary. I mean, there are a couple sketchy parts that we ride on that, if you fall the wrong way, you're going to fall for a good 20, 30 feet.
Yeah.
But nothing like the YouTube videos that I see that it's you're dead if you fall. So I don't know. It's not being scared. It's just kind of getting, you get the blood flowing, get your adrenaline pumping. That's all it is.
Do you
and I haven't died yet.
Evidently.
Forgot seriously injured.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the spirit of Pat Cummins on this week's episode of Submission. Pat, let me ask you something. If you and Dennis, and of course for everybody listening at home who doesn't realize, Pat trains Dennis Bermudez, so he's not talking about me, unfortunately. But you and Dennis, have you ever ridden one of those bikes together where it's a couple of people on the bike at the same time, pedaling at the same time? Tandem, yeah. Have you ever done any tandem biking before? Yeah.
No, but we definitely need to put that on the list. That will definitely be on the reality show.
That needs 100%. To be on the pilot, like a tandem bike ride and then a nice picnic.
It would be great on a countdown video, is all I'm saying.
Yes.
Nothing's tougher than a couple of guys on a tandem bike.
Oh man.
Well, it's not.
Well, let's go back a couple of fights, talk about your fight with OSP before we get into this Glover fight. You were doing a good job in the striking department until you got caught. Have you had a chance to rewatch that fight, and what were your thoughts on how you were doing until you got caught by OSP?
Yeah, I watched that fight. It took me a while to rewatch it, because that one that one really broke my heart. You know, I just felt like I was ready to make a statement, and it just wasn't in the cards. And I think, you know, like that's the one thing that makes MMA so exciting. It's like anything can happen at any time, and it just happened to. You know, I feel like it was really going my way, and if we fought 10 more times, I'd win all 10 of them. But yeah, I mean, if you don't go back and watch a fight and learn something from it, you're doing yourself a disservice. You know, so it's really important. I've done that with the DC fight too. But you know, there's like it leaves a taste in your mouth, and you know, like you're just like, I want that one back. I want to do that one over. So I'm always, I don't know. I'm always like game to get revenge on anybody. So, but you know, especially from watching the film and going back and taking a look at and what you did right and what you did wrong. There's a lot of value in all that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you did a lot of things right in that fight, and before you got caught, it looked like you may get the win in that one. I'm just wondering, how comfortable do you feel in the striking now compared to, you know, when you fought DC, for example? When you're out there and you know, all right, I'm going to be sort of stuck striking because this other guy's a wrestler. Do you feel a lot more comfortable just standing up and just striking, or is there still a bit of angst, a bit of uncomfortability for you when you do that?
Yeah, I actually, at a certain point in that fight, in the OSP fight, I felt like, man, I feel pretty comfortable right now. I don't really feel like I need to rush the takedown. You know, I was part of the game plan was to not rush into things. You know, take my time. I know I'm in better shape than this guy. Eventually, he's going to get tired and get slow, and then I can do whatever I want. But yeah, at a certain point, I remember thinking, I feel really comfortable. You know, this doesn't feel like, you know, like my first fight or my first fight in the UFC. You know, it's like there definitely was that kind of, you know, you get a little stiff and you kind of it's uncharted territory. You know, especially for a wrestler. You know, you're more comfortable on the inside. It's understandable. But you know, I think I've said it a million times to you guys. Getting that experience and taking every fight I could possibly get as quickly as possible to catch me up to speed. That's kind of what I wanted to do. And now I feel like I'm 10 fights in, and I'm finally comfortable in all areas. You know, no matter how a fight goes, I feel comfortable in that situation. So there you go.
I can't believe it's already been 10 fights. Time flies. I think, you know, the biggest criticism about you has always been, you know, he's a fantastic wrestler. He can take pretty much anybody down, but he's got to improve his striking. I'm just wondering, how much do you focus on your striking now compared to your wrestling? Because you've already got that wrestling. You've already had that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big. I'd rather progress slowly when it comes to striking, because I feel like a lot of really good wrestlers make the mistake of falling in love with the knockout. And just thinking, man, I just want to get out there and swing this hammer and go for the big, you know, the big kibosh. And I don't think, I mean, I don't know. I want to slowly work it in, and you know, I want to rely on what I'm good at. But as far as training now, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I've cranked up the striking quite a bit, and it makes sense. You know, just put yourself in that position. If it's uncomfortable or whatever, just, you know, make yourself strike, make yourself feel comfortable. But I think transitioning from striking to wrestling is the most important part. You know, just wrestling isn't quite doing it, and just striking isn't doing it. But mixing the two, and that's what makes mixed martial arts, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, certainly. And, you know, we see a lot of fighters and they work on a bunch of stuff in the gym, but then when they sort of get out to the octagon, it's a different kind of pressure. And then you sort of forget half of the things that you've done, and you don't do half of the things that you worked on. I'm just wondering, what kind of striking training are you doing? Do you do Muay Thai and kickboxing and then pure boxing, or is it just a pure MMA striking that you're doing. I'm just curious. Take us through it, Pat. What would like a typical week of striking training look for you leading into a fight?
I'll work with my boxing coach, and he's Danny Perez. He's a former world champ. He's got all the accolades you could want. And but what really makes him different is he's going to make something work for your style and for your whichever area you're competing. He trains purely boxing guys, but he trains a bunch of MMA guys too. And he knows that it's total different sport. You're using boxing and MMA, but it's different. It's not. If you're just going to go out there and be a pure boxer, it's not going to work for you in MMA. So he's good. He's great about that, and he's humble and taking suggestions, or you say, hey man, this doesn't feel right. He'll say, okay, cool. Let's see how can we fix that? How can we make this work for you?
Mm-hmm.
So he's great with that. And then I also train with Mel Minor down in San Diego. He's also a world champion in Muay Thai. So he's my other striking guy, and he's really developed my kicking game, my clinch game with elbows and things like that, and knees, things like that. So that's kind of that's probably a little slower to progress, just because it's a little more difficult to wrap all those things around in that. But I definitely feel like that's an area. I mean, that's an area I'm ready to get better in. So I'm always improving. If I'm not improving, I'm too good, then it's boring, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You always want to have room to get better.
I'm just curious, because we've seen what you do in the octagon, but when you're in the training room and you're doing your Muay Thai sparring, your kickboxing sparring, and your boxing sparring, what kind of stuff are you doing in the training room? Is Pat Cummins doing spinning elbows, and is he doing cool combinations and Superman punches? Because we don't have an eye into what you're doing in training, but is that kind of stuff going on? Are you sort of preparing new techniques that you just haven't really shown in your fights yet?
Yeah, I definitely have a couple tricks in the bag. I don't know. But I also feel like it's the same with wrestling. There's a bunch of flashy moves you can do, but the basics are what take you to the next level. And if you can do the most simple things, the best, you're gonna win every time. So, and I feel like that's true with striking as well. So, I mean, every once in a while, you can set something up, or you can do something a little unorthodox and it's going to catch somebody. But for me, it's repetition, the basic stuff. Just become a master at the very simple things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned elbows before, and elbows were actually what got the job done for you at Brazil, at UFC 190 when you beat Fajar. You showed a lot of heart in that fight. There were some difficult moments for you in that fight, though. What went through your mind as you were sitting in your corner between the rounds near the end of the fight when your face was pretty beat up?
Yeah, I think after the first round, I knew, standing there in the corner, I was thinking, okay, my eye is swelling up pretty bad. I know this is going to be an obstacle the rest of the fight. So, but I think the key is not to focus on that. I have so many other things that I need to focus on. I need to focus that punches coming at me. I need to figure out where my openings are, and and how hard I should push a pace. So I think staying focused on something, on all those other things that you have to be focused on in a cage, there was no time to be distracted by what was going on with my face. I could look at that later and be like, wow, I really got jacked up there. What's wrong with me? Why is my face so sensitive?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, Fajal's one of those guys. He's a heavy hitter, and every time he touches you, it freaking hurts. So, I think that was good. That was good for my confidence too. You know, it's like, okay, I took a couple of tough punches from a guy that can really throw down, and that, you know, just kind of it builds you up, makes you feel like, okay, I'm back in this thing. I can go in there and get it, duke it out with anybody.
Yeah, well, it was a huge win. You were able to turn the table and get that awesome finish in the third round. Now, you have to tell us about your Brazilian post-fight celebrations. Now, we know you had the face thing going on, but you're almost a local fixture in the country since you're always fighting there. What went on after the fight? Where did Pat Cummins go with Ryan? Where did you guys celebrate? What happened? Give us the lowdown.
Well, I have to address like the fact that I freaked out in the cage after the fight. I'm like usually the most calm person ever, and I'm just kind of, you know, I'll see somebody celebrating a fight, and I'm just kind of like, man, what are you doing? You know, you should expect that to happen, right? Like every time you go in the cage, you should expect yourself to win. So, but I've never. I mean, I don't know. Just like something unlocked in me, and I just like freaked. I like lost track of what was going on. I just started yelling and freaking out. So. That was interesting. You know, it's cool. I don't know. It's kind of neat. Like, I showed a different side of myself. Like, so I was like, well, where did that come from? Like, why did I just do that? But no, I mean, I guess it was just, you know, it was an emotional victory. So I guess that's that. But
hey.
As far as yeah.
I was just going to say, it's your win. I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's funny because when we look through image galleries on like USA Today and Getty from that fight, like every single photo is basically a picture of you yelling. And this face that you've never had before, just like, ah!
Yeah, they always pick the best pictures, make me look the best in those situations.
Well, speaking of pictures, apparently, according to Chael's son, you used a post-fight picture of yourself on Tinder where your eyes were completely red and bruised. Is this true? And did it lead to any Tinder success?
No, unfortunately, my tactics did not work. It was.
But you did use the photo on Tinder.
No, definitely not. But Chael, you know, he's a funny guy, and he's always got some play to say it, though. But I loved it. It was funny.
And here we thought chicks dug scars. All right. So your fight with Glover will be in Brazil as well. Is there a part of you that's like, okay, enough's enough. I can't keep fighting here all the damn time?
Yeah. I mean, it's getting to that point. You know, Joe Silva's called us and was like, you know, and we worked the fight out, and we're like, okay, where's it going to be? And he's like, your favorite place. Like, again, man. I mean, I don't know. I feel like after this one, I can kind of, maybe they'll leave me alone and let me fight in some other country. But who knows? You never know. You never know what they're going to do.
Well, maybe you get like a nice Swedish card, or maybe the next Australia card. You know, we've got that big card in November. Maybe the next one you can be on it. I want to talk about this matchup. The biggest issue with this matchup from an armchair expert's perspective is Glover being a strong grappler, which could cancel out your advantage and highlight his, which is striking. With striking, being the biggest part that you want to work on in your game, the most developing part, how do you prepare for this challenge?
I mean, you know, as much as what other people say, I still think if I want to take this fight to the ground and be successful on the ground, I can do that. You know, but my strategy for striking is just be sharper and be faster. I mean, I feel like that's kind of that should be everybody's game plan. But I really feel like that's a real possibility for this fight. Is, you know, I feel like I have a speed advantage, and you know, so it's really working my footwork. Make sure I have, you know, I have my legs under me, and I'm just working on you know, coming in, doing what I need to do, and exiting, you know, however I can, or transitioning to a takedown. So, I really do. I really feel like I have the advantage when it comes to speed, and I think I think what a lot of people haven't seen yet is the power of my punches, and I'm pretty anxious to show that off. So maybe this will be the fight.
You mentioned the call from Joe Silva where he mentioned he'd be fighting Glover next. I just wanted to get your reaction when you found that out, because obviously Glover is coming off a big win over OSP, and you've been fighting some tough guys back to back to back. When you heard you'd be fighting Glover, were you pretty excited? Because it seems like one more win over Glover sort of catapults you back, not back, but right up that top 10 list.
Yeah, I mean that's what I want. I'm not here to just to hang out and pick up some easy wins, or I want to get to the top as quickly as possible. And I feel like now that everything is kind of coming along. Everything feels much more comfortable. I've had I've had an hour in the cage now, so I feel like that's really important, and I feel like time isn't really on my side, so I want to get this done. I want to be the champ as soon as I can, and I want to get obviously I want that rematch with Daniel, and now I can take out two birds with one stone. I can take the belt and I can get revenge on that fight all in one evening. So that's pretty great.
Well, I mean, a win over Glover will definitely get you up there and definitely get you close to fighting Cormier in that rematch. I got to ask, it's funny because with Glover, he's coming off a dominant win over OSP, although a lot of people feel that he hasn't looked the same since his loss to John Jones. It just feels like there's been a lot of steam taken out of his sails. And then, of course, there was that loss to Phil Davis. Do you think the big loss to Jones has affected him mentally or even physically in any way?
I mean, I'm sure it has, but it's kind of the way I look at it is how you react to those adverse times, and he's done the same thing that I've done. You get knocked down and you dust yourself off, and you keep coming forward, and you keep putting in the time, and things will pay off for you. So I feel like we're very similar in that way. We're both. I don't know. We're both that. We have that blue collar mentality where it's like, all right, back to work, and which I think makes this fight really exciting. And I don't know. I'm ready to go out there and see who can stand up to the test. I think it's gonna be me.
Oh, for sure. And, it's obviously same mentality, same hairstyles as well going into this one as well. There's a lot of similarities. Now, you brought up Daniel Cormier, and, since you haven't been on the show for a while, he has become the new UFC light heavyweight champion. There's some discussion from fans in the MMA community about if he's really the true UFC champion due to John Jones never really losing the title to him. What are your thoughts on that whole sort of conversation?
I mean, listen, you have to play the game. You got to follow the rules, and if you're not going to follow the rules, that's kind of on you. You got to pull together and kind of walk the line if you want to compete, and especially in the UFC, it's the biggest organization out there. There's the spotlight on you. You gotta follow the rules. But I really feel like Daniel's worthy of being the champ. He hasn't beaten John, but I still think, that's a tough guy, and he's basically gone through everybody else and done made things look really easy. So I feel like in time, I feel like people will forget this conversation and just be like, wow, he's good. but and if John Jones comes back and there's a rematch, hey, that's great. Give him a chance for revenge. That's great. That's my thing. So, you gotta give it to other people too. But yeah, I don't know. I don't buy into it. It's just, whoever's there is whoever's there to compete is gonna win. And if you can't compete, you're not in the show. Sorry.
I've just got a couple more questions, just in regards to just the light heavyweight division in general and the title picture. Ryan, I just want to get your thoughts on this. Ryan Bader seemed like a logical choice for the next shot until Alexander Gustafsson got the shot instead. Do you think it was deserved, and who do you think wins between DC and Gus?
Yeah, I feel like I should just get hurt, pull out a fight, and get hurt, and maybe I'll get a title shot. I did think that Bader was next in line, but you gotta tick all the boxes too. You can't just I don't know. You gotta make the right amount of noise. You gotta have the right story, and he apparently to the UFC he didn't have it. So, but no, I do think that Alexander Gustafsson and Daniel Cormier, I feel like that's a fun fight to watch. It's such a clash of styles. It'll be interesting to watch. I am more excited about that fight than I would be about Bader and DC.
Who's coming out on top? Who do you think wins, Gus or DC?
I gotta think DC wins that.
Keep the rivalry alive.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, come on. I gotta win the belt and get revenge all in one night. So right. I'm gonna root for him until I'm standing across from him again.
Let me ask you, because you mentioned Ryan Bader isn't sort of the sexy option in terms of choices. Let me ask you this: what if you could give him advice, because you're a guy that came in your first fight in the UFC and fought DC for in a huge match, and you sold the pay-per-view because of your personality and the things that you said. You're a real character. If you could give Ryan Bader one piece of advice about what he needs to do to sort of make his package as an MMA fighter more complete and more interesting to fans, what would that one piece of advice be?
I would say just be yourself. Unless you're really boring, unless you know that, man, I'm a boring person, then maybe you should try to come up with some kind of persona or something different. But I've always found that just be yourself, be you, and it comes off way more believable. It's so much more natural, and you just relax and be you. I mean, it's really pretty simple, but I feel like a lot of people don't do it.
I feel like sometimes, and this is not directed at Ryan, but I feel like sometimes people maybe go a little bit too sort of corporate and maybe act a little bit over the top nice, when with the UFC, they are forgiving. You can sort of be yourself. You can cause a bit of trouble. You can be a rascal, like Nick Diaz and other people, and that'll get you to big title shots. Just got one more tough question, and then we're on to the tap-out round, and it's all sunshine and rainbows, Pat. Just still, in regards to this Jon Jones DC light heavyweight situation, if Jon Jones does come back and fights DC in a rematch, do you think it goes any differently, or would the outcome still be the same?
I definitely think DC's chances will definitely get a little better in the next fight. Jon Jones has been out for a long time. There's a lot of pressure on him, and I don't think DC was the same fighter that he usually is in that fight. I think something was going on. He didn't look the same, and maybe that's just Jon Jones shutting him down in every possible moment. But I tend to think there was something else going on there. So I think it's a toss up. But I think Daniel's chances go way up if there's a rematch.
Interesting perspective. While we're talking about rematches, if you do beat Glover Teixeira, can we look forward to you trying to call him out in the ring after the fight? And if you do get your hands on Daniel Cormier, how do you see that rematch going? Because you've mentioned that's the big story. That's what you're going for. How would you see a rematch play out now that you had all this experience in MMA?
Yeah, that would definitely be my call out. Yeah, I feel like I'm a handful for anybody in 3 rounds. I think people look at me, anyone in the light heavyweight division kind of looks at me and is like, I don't want to deal with that dude for 3 rounds. Like that's kind of torturous. But let's add 2 more rounds to that, and I feel like not too many people can hang with my pace and the way I push things and just kind of making it miserable. I feel like that's my ace in the hole. So, obviously I'd change it. I've watched the tape. I see what I did wrong. I'd change a couple of things around, but yeah, I think that pace and that mentality of, okay, man, you're stuck in here for 25 minutes with me, and I'm gonna push you hard. So that's my best attribute probably, and I got a pretty face.
Of course, you got that black belt in wrestling as well. Now, Pat, we're going to let you go in a second, but first we're just going to do the old classic Submission Radio tap out round, voted by GQ magazine as the sexiest segment on radio. That may or may not be a fact. The first question, you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. The first question is, what's the strangest ingredients you've ever made pancakes out of before?
Strangest ingredient.
Are you like MacGyver, where you made him out of like a paper clip and like a rubber band?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking household goods, like a can of paint and sawdust.
Yeah.
No, probably. I really like to make. I like to put quinoa in my pancakes. A lot of people think, "Oh man, it's disgusting," but it's pretty good. You do it.
Wow.
You do it the right way.
Wow. Now, we read on Twitter that you and an airline rep had a funny back and forth on a flight after your latest fight. Give us the lowdown. What happened? What did they say to you, Pat? Be honest.
Well, I mean, they were kind of questioning my American heritage, and I was like, well, listen, I'm part raccoon. I feel like that's American. Come on. So, my eyes are so black. Yeah, but I convinced them. I showed, I kind of showed them the before and after, and I don't know, they could see. I should have shown them a clip from the fight. That would have been much better.
Yeah, that's weird. That's weird. Why were they questioning your American heritage? Were you speaking with an accent or something?
Yeah, I was slurring.
Well, Pat, here's the next question: is Pat Cummins pro or anti Tinder?
I'm pro. Personally, I'm not on Tinder, but I'm pro Tinder. I feel like it's an option. It's people are on their phones all the time. They're so image oriented. Let them do their thing. Let them get matched up and Tinder their little hearts out. I love it.
It's a good option.
All the ladies out there who have been Tindering with a Pat Cummins, unfortunately, it's a fake account. We're sorry for breaking your heart. Now, Pat, you mentioned Dennis earlier on in this interview, Dennis Bermudez. Tell us, how's your buddy doing after his last loss? How's he handling life, and where's he at the moment?
He's doing well. He's kind of, I don't know if a lot of people knew this, but he broke his leg in that fight.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so he's healing. It's not the kind of break where you need you got to have a cast up to your hip, but he's kind of let that heal. I know he's been back in the training room and kind of getting things going again, but. Dennis is one of those guys that he's going to give a great performance every time he goes out there. He's that guy. He bounces off the walls and is crazy. So you can't, he's just, that's Dennis, and he's a wild man, and that's fighting is what he lives for. So I'm excited to see his next one.
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely hope that Dennis recovers well. Speaking of your training team, use a sentence to describe your relationship with Ryan Parsons, because it seems pretty special.
Well, we are blood related.
Right.
No, no, a lot of people do think we're brothers. There's some weird, we're
Similar
related
hairstyles.
somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got the same hairstyle going, and I don't know. We do have a special relationship, but it's probably not as glamorous as you would think. I lived at his house. I slept on his couch for a good year, so we're closer than most people would be. And I'm really close with his family. He has a wonderful family, and his wife is Australian.
Oh, wow.
You guys are aware of that? Yeah.
Nice.
And he has two little children. He has a daughter named Misha. She'll be excited that I mentioned her name.
Hey.
And his son name is Maseo. They're probably the closest thing. I'm Uncle Pat to them, I guess, and that's really, I'm not an uncle in any other way, so that's enough for me.
Yeah.
That's
I don't want
awesome.
my own kids.
You do or you don't want your own kids?
No, I can't handle that.
Okay. Us neither.
Now, Pat, we've got to ask you, it's getting close to the end of the year. What's a strong contender for movie of the year for Pat Cummins? What would you choose?
Oh, man. I haven't really seen. I saw Mad Max. That was great. You guys like that? The strong female part. Everybody
I haven't seen it yet, but Dennis, I believe you had some strong words for it, didn't you?
I had some strong words for it, Pat. I'll be honest.
People got upset.
Is it really your pick for movie of the year? What about Zombie Beavers?
Unfortunately, I haven't seen. It's been on my list for a while. I haven't seen it.
Well, before you come back on the show, you definitely have to check out Zombie Beavers so we can talk more about that. Last question before we let you go, Pat, the most important one. How do you plan on beating Glover Teixeira at UFC Fight Night 77? Official prediction.
I plan. Yeah, I mean, it's not so much a plan. It's something that will happen. But yeah, no, I feel like I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna strike with him. I'm gonna surprise him on my feet, and if it goes to the ground, it goes to the ground. But I feel like I'm looking for the knockout this time around. So,
well, there you guys go.
It's coming.
There's going to be some surprises, it seems like, in stock for UFC Fight Night 77 from our good friend Pat Cummins. You can follow him on Twitter at @officialdirk, and he's always got great updates of him doing adventurous things outside, making us feel guilty for just sitting at home and eating cake. And you can watch him November 7th at UFC Fight Night 77. Pat, as always, it's a real pleasure having you on the program.
Yeah, you guys are the best. I'll come back anytime. You know that.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, good luck in the fight, man. Go get him, and we'll definitely have a chat with you afterwards.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Demetrius Johnson, the UFC flyweight champion of the world, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is a UFC and Bellator veteran and a cornerstone of World Series of Fighting. He is also the World Series of Fighting middleweight champion and will be looking to add the light heavyweight title to his collection on September 18th at World Series of Fighting 23. David Branch, welcome to Submission Radio. How are you?
I'm okay. How's it going, guys?
David, welcome to the program. Now, we read an interesting fact about you. When you were young, you trained karate for 2 years before moving into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm just wondering, what inspired your transition, and how did you end up getting into MMA eventually?
That was a long story. I'll try to make this short as possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was looking for a jiu-jitsu school, and it said on this karate school, JUJITSU. And it was traditional jiu-jitsu, more wrist locks and karate. And I ended up training there for about 2 years. And I would watch like UFC and Pride videos of like the Gracies and Henzo and Boyce, and I was submitting like all my karate guys, like when I would just tell them like, let's play around, it was just like free fight, and I would like take them down and submit them with like the moves that I learned from the videos.
Yeah.
And then my instructor there, he was able to find a school in the Bronx, which was a Health and Gracie Academy, and Michael Case, he was the instructor there with the Health and Gracie Association, and I started my training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu there.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the Bronx. You know, you grew up in the Bronx in New York City. We're here in Australia, and we only really know the Bronx from T-shirts and movies. What was it like growing up there in the Bronx?
Oh, the Bronx was rough, man. When I grew up in the Bronx, I mean, it was like I was right in the crack epidemic.
Wow.
That was like in the late '80s more. So I started remembering things. And New York City was a war zone. It was a lot different than it is now. And you know, it's just a part of the thing that makes your character. It built my character. It made me strong, and I was able to get out of all of that and do something good with my life.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you are the champion and, you know, one of the most popular sort of MMA fighters in World Series of Fighting. Do you go back to the Bronx much? Do you still have many contacts there? I'm guessing you're sort of like a role model for a lot of the kids growing up in the area.
Yeah, I don't go back to the Bronx much. I mean, I still know a lot of people there. But I'd like to go back and start speaking to, like, kids in schools and a lot of the troubled kids and a lot of the what they call like intermediate schools, like when you're a bad kid or you have a behavioral problem. And I like to let them know that like there's other options, you know. But other than that, I don't go back to the Bronx much. I just train. I live in Brooklyn now, and I'm here most of the time.
Very nice. Well, you got a special relationship with Renzo Gracie. We've had Renzo on the show before, and you know he's a fantastic personality. Tell us a little bit about that dynamic between you guys.
Enzo's a great guy. You know, he's an amazing instructor, amazing professor, amazing teacher, amazing person. And I learned a lot of stuff from Enzo about like not only just fighting, just life, and you know, just how to be a real person. There's one thing about Enzo, he's a real dude, and it is what it is with him. You know, like he's just he's the nicest guy in the world. You know, will give you his left shoe if you were missing one. He's just that kind of person, you know. He's a really good guy, and he's doing well for himself, and he deserves it. You know, he worked very hard and put out a lot of good students. Just a long laundry list of good fighters and good jiu-jitsu practitioners.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, not only is he an awesome fighter and teacher, but like you mentioned, he's a fantastic guy, really hilarious, really great with people. I mean, you would have had a lot of really fun moments with him, a lot of special moments. What's a funny moment that you've had with Renzo Gracie that you can share with us on the show? Have you ever had a moment with him? Because we know he's got a pretty funny sense of humor.
Well, I mean, there's so many, but like the best times where the best moments that I usually have with Renzo is when he's telling me his stories, like the stuff that he's going through in life, or things that happen to him during fights and stuff like that. I mean, that's just fantastic for him to share those things. That's usually the best time.
Yeah, he's a great story, Renzo. Now, just talking about your career, we're going to talk about your title fight coming up, but we just want to go back in time a little bit. You know, you had a few fights in the UFC between 2010 and 2011 where you had some difficulty, more notably getting submitted by Husam Palhares via Niba, UFC Sanchez versus Campman. You know, looking back now, what went wrong with your run in your company then?
As far as what?
Just in general, because you seem to be having a lot more success now. So I'm sort of wondering, you know, what went wrong then and what adjustments did you make to have the success that you have now?
Well, I can't, you know, I don't want to take anything away from those fighters that defeated me at that time. But at that time, like when I first got into the UFC, when I first got into the UFC, I was going through a lot of stuff. I was going through a lot of personal things, and I wasn't focused. I was just making the transition from being an iron worker to being a professional MMA fighter. And, you know, at that point, it was just a lot going on. I was about to have a baby, you know, with my first son was on the way, and it was just a lot going on, you know. And, you know, I think after the Anthony Johnson fight, I promised myself that, you know, if I was going to continue to do MMA, I was going to do it 100% right and do it with 100% dedication. You know, that's something that my dad told me, and he had a long conversation with me, along with a lot of other friends, and they said, look, you got all the talent in the world, but you got to dedicate yourself to the sport. All you got to do is do it until you're done with the business, and you be able to, nobody can beat you. And it took me a while to start, you know, realizing that, and the more I started winning, the more success that I had, the more confidence I got. And knowing that the things that I was doing as far as my preparation were the things that I needed to do to become a champion. And then once I became a champion, it just made me train even harder because, my lifestyle changed a little bit and, just my credibility as far as being an MMA fighter in the MMA world had skyrocketed a lot. And it put me among some really big names. And being a world title holder in a big organization, it means a lot to me. And, it makes me train even that much more harder, when somebody tries to take it away from me. It makes me that much more mean and that much more hungrier. I thought that when I got the world title, that I was not going to be hungry anymore, but now I'm even more hungry. It's almost like that the belt that I have now, or any belt that I would have, not to disrespect my body, I appreciate and I'm very proud of my middleweight championship belt in World Series of Fighting, but I want another one, and one belt is not enough for me, and you can't please a wolf with a dog's toy. So, I'm at for more,
It's a great analogy. You mentioned that you were an iron worker. I'm just curious, before we get onto your fight with World Series of Fighting, what kind of schedule did you have? Were you working full-time and training at nights? How did that all work?
Oh, my goodness. I was burning at both ends of the candle. And the last job site that I worked on was I worked on Bank of America, and then I worked on another job site called Beekman Towers. And one of the project managers, the foreman there, this guy named Pete Murata from Towers Installation, he told me I was in the union, local 580, a great group of guys. And Pete Murata told me, he said, look, kid, you're burning at both ends of the candle because I would have to go to work and be there at 6:30 because we start at 7.
Wow.
So you have to be in a city downstairs, and it used to be freezing cold, and you work all the way till 2:30, maybe 3 o'clock. It depends on if you have overtime. And then I have to run right to the gym right afterwards and train. And that's pretty much how I got prepared for my fights. That's pretty much how I prepared for my first 6 fights. My 7th fight is when I made the transition into being a full-time fighter. And, it was just a lot of free time, and I wasn't focused, and I was doing other things and, things that kept me non-productive. And, I got out of it what I put into it, and, that was that.
Yeah, that's it's crazy. We have a lot of respect for, not only fighters in general, but anyone who has another job outside of it and has to focus on 2 things at once. A lot of guys who get released from the UFC have mixed success outside of the octagon, but in your case, you're a champion in the middleweight division, and you'll be looking to hold a second belt simultaneously at World Series of Fighting 23. You're doing pretty well, and seeing how things have panned out, would you say that, in a way, being cut from the UFC was the best thing that could have happened to you?
Well, I think so, because, again, it gave me an opportunity to see the way things work, the way the business aspect of it is. I'm a very observant person, and it gave me a raw, perspective of the insides and outs of MMA. Like, there's not too much people can tell me about what MMA is about. This is going to be my 20th professional fight. I've been in all the major organizations. I fought a lot of the top names. And I've seen a lot, so I think that it was a blessing. I think that I got into the UFC a little too early, a little too prematurely, but that was then. This is now. I'm happy where I am right now. I'm very proud to be the middleweight champion, and I'm very proud to be fighting. And I'm very happy knowing that I'm going to be fighting on the 18th. In WSOF 23 to become the light heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're going to ask you a few questions about that fight in a second, but you mentioned you fought some big names. Another guy in the company who's a champion as well as Husmail Palhares. He's in the welterweight division. Now, there's been a little bit of controversy around, obviously, his latest fight with Jake Shields. He's been suspended, and people aren't sure what to really do with him. You're a guy that's faced him previously. What do you make of Husmail and the way he handled himself in the Jake Shields fight? What do you think? What do you think of that whole situation?
Okay, just my perspective on Husmail Palhares as a fighter. Okay, I think that he's a brilliant fighter. I think that his technique is very good, very crisp. He has a system that he really sticks to, and at any given moment, he can tap anybody. He can tap any of the heavyweight champions in any organization, as well as light heavy, on any given day if they fall victim to that one mistake. As a person, I think that deep down inside he might be a nice guy, but I think that there's a mental switch that he has, that he's not able to be a professional when he does land a submission as far as tapping, releasing holds. And I don't think that he has very good sportsmanship as far as that. I think that maybe he may be a little off. I'm not too sure. It's his last fight as far as, when he fought Jake Shields, I mean, the eye gouging and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think that is somebody that has good character. You cheat to try to win. It's like, just fight fair and square and keep it like that. But I think that when he does fight and certain qualities that he does have as a fighter should be commended. I think that there are certain qualities that he does have as a fighter, that are very good, but then there are other qualities that are really bad, and it tarnishes his personality.
You come from a Renzo Gracie camp, so you're no stranger to submissions and etiquette. I'm just wondering, in terms of repercussions and consequences, what do you think should happen now? Should Palhares be allowed to fight again? Or are you going to have to go down to welterweight and hold 3 belts so that there's an actual welterweight champion in World Series of Fight?
I don't know if I can make welterweight. It's one of these things that, it's been happening over and over and over and over again. And, you can't, when you lock on a submission, especially a joint lock, I mean, the person that is, that's inside the joint lock they're at your mercy, okay? And if they tap, they've signaled, okay, through the unified rules of mixed martial arts that they've quit, okay, that they've submitted to you, that you've gotten the position and they're conceding the fight. Okay, for you to hold on, now you're putting that fighter and his career and the rest of his career at risk, and I don't think that that's fair. And if that's something that you're doing, and if you're gouging people's eyes out and stuff like that, and you're not following the rules, and you've been busted for steroids in the past, I mean, I think that it's time for the hammer to come down on you, and that's something that you would have brought down on yourself, It's just been constant this, constant that, at some point there has to be some kind of discipline.
Yeah, no, great points, mate. It's interesting to see what they end up doing with him. Now, let's move on to your fight. You're obviously fighting Teddy Holder at World Series of Fighting 23. Teddy's last win was his biggest with a stoppage over Thiago Silva. What do you think of the skill set that he's bringing in against you in this fight?
Well, I mean, Teddy Holder has a puncher's chance. That's what he has. And, every fighter has a puncher's chance. But the thing is to be able to take Teddy's tools away from him and eliminate the threat as quickly as possible, okay? Start to neutralize Teddy and break him down periodically and torture him until he's ready to quit. And then when he's at that point, then open the door for him to have sweet release and then be able to finish the fight. I mean, that's the only thing that I see that's going to happen. I see me knocking him out, or I see me finishing him by a TKO or submission.
Sweet release.
But it will be systematic, because I'm the general inside that cage. Nobody's going to fight me the way I don't want to be fought. Nobody's going to fight me slow or it's slower than I want the fight to be. Nobody's going to fight me faster than the way I want the fight to be. I'm going to dictate the pace. I'm a master inside that cage, and I'm going to show it again on the 18th. And every time I get in there, it's going to be better. So that's what's going to happen with that fight. I mean, I respect him as a fighter, and because he was able to knock out a guy like Thiago Silva, I've trained even that much more harder for him, because I don't like to lose. And I'm not going to let him, come along and take away the opportunities that I've worked hard for. I mean, he's worked hard for it too. I don't think that, I think that the situation with Matt Hamill and Thiago Silva is what put him in the position, and he rectified it, being in this spot by knocking out Thiago Silva or TKOing him. So I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He's a tough guy, and I'm just going to come and do what I always do. Surgically, get a very surgical finish.
Yeah, I mean, we'll absolutely love the confidence. With Teddy, he's obviously got dynamite in his hands. Most of his fights, if he does get the win, he does finish him in the first round. Do you think that, in a way, the longer the fight goes, it'll be more in the realm of a place where you have a lot more experience. Do you think the advantages will be even more on your side the longer the fight goes?
I think that the advantage is going to be, mine. The longer the fight goes, the minute the cage closes, okay? Because he's got dynamite in his hands. I mean, everybody does, If you got a pair of 4-ounce gloves on and you got your hands wrapped underneath, I mean, it's designed for one thing. It's designed for a knockout, okay? And he's very confident because he was able to land and produce knockouts. So when you produce a knockout, you start to get a little bloodthirsty for it. And I'm thriving. I need that. I need him to be thirsty for that, and for him to chase that, so that I can take that hope away from him. And once something that you've been so successful with is not working for you anymore, then you start to lose confidence. And then when you're starting to get beat in other areas on top of that, then you really start to lose confidence. So that's the way I see the fight. I have excellent problem-solving skills inside the cage.
Well, the exciting thing is, I mean, not only are you a fantastic fighter and, Teddy Holder's a tough test, but you're actually going to be fighting for another world title. You're already the middleweight champion at World Series of Fighting. You're fighting for the light heavyweight title. I mean, that's an opportunity that not a lot of fighters do get in their careers. Tell us about that. How does that feel in general? Because after September 18th, you may be holding two belts in a major organization.
Will be holding 2 belts. It feels amazing. Like it really does. It puts me in with big names up there, like Dan Henderson and people who have been 2 division champions, Randy Couture, Vitor Belfort. A lot of great names. And there's something that I've put in the work for it, and I'm ready to receive it. I'm not going to stand in my way on this. I didn't stand in my way when it was time for me to become the middleweight champion, and I'm definitely not going to stand in my way when it's time to make history and become the light heavyweight champion of the world, as well as being the middleweight champion of the world. And I'm going to let all my hard work pay off, go in there confident, and do what I do best.
Yeah, for sure. And just curious, because obviously you're going to be middleweight and light heavyweight champion. Do you have any aim in going up to heavyweight and grabbing the title there? Or are you happy with holding the middleweight and light heavyweight titles?
No.
Come on, David.
Come on, David. Hey, listen. They make weight classes for a reason, okay? Like, I'm already testing the waters now. I think I'm one of the biggest middleweights in the world.
Yeah.
So that's what gave me the confidence to go up to light heavyweight. If I was on the smaller side, I would have just stood right where I was and been happy with what I achieved. But because the opportunity presented itself, and I like the challenge, this is something that's happening right now. But I'm not gonna get too testy and keep going up in weight, because those guys are 245 pounds solid muscle. If I'm 245 pounds, I got a solid gut. So I'm not gonna go up too heavy.
That's good. Well, through this interview, we've ruled out welterweight and we've ruled out heavyweight. I'm just wondering, holding 2 belts at the same time, that's definitely something that gets you noticed by other organizations. I'm just wondering, would fighting in the UFC one more time still be a goal for you somewhere down the line, or are you happy dominating the scene at World Series of Fighting?
I'm not going to think too far down the line right now. Just dominating this next fight and doing what I'm supposed to do, and winning this fight and capturing the light heavyweight belt is what my next goal is. I don't want to look too far down the line. There are a lot of things that I want to do. Maybe dropping down to welterweight might be an option. I flirted with the idea, but for right now, it's the light heavyweight. That's what's on my plate, and I'm hungry and I'm ready to go to eat. So.
Well, get us excited. Give us the prediction. How do you see yourself beating Teddy Holder at World Series of Fighting 23? What's the official prediction?
Okay, I only see two things happening. Mm-hmm. Okay, I see a knockout happening via TKO, or I see a submission. That's how I see me beating him, in no other way. In a very, very dominant and violent fashion.
Well, there we go. MMA fans, we love the violence. World Series of Fighting 23 goes down September 18th via WSOF.com for all you Aussies. NBC also if you're in America and other outlets around the world. Of course, it's got the other title fight, Justin Gaethje versus Luis Palominos. It's going to be a very exciting event. And of course, you can follow David Branch on Twitter at David C. Branch MMA. David, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
You got it, guys.
Hi guys, it's Joanna Jędrzejczyk, UFC strawweight champion. Listen to Submission Radio.
Our next guest just recently came back from Brazil where he competed in the ADCC, a former Bellator world champion and one of the top welterweights in the UFC. It's a pleasure to welcome Hector Lombard back to Submission Radio. Hector, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, man.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you back. Hector, you're fresh off your trip to Brazil. You know, even though you didn't win the ADCC, tell us, how was the ADCC experience? Tell us about it.
A bit disappointed about it because I won the match, the one that would take me to the semifinals, and then the finals would be easier. And the reason why I say that I'm mad is because, you know, I got multiple takedowns, and they didn't score the takedowns. Got these guys back, didn't score, and every single time they actually started in the middle of the mat, they should have scored points. That's what the rule says. But overall, happy with my performance anyway. So I faced one of the greatest jiu-jitsu players of all time. It's like 11 times world champion. So at the weight that I wasn't even mine, 99 kilos, it's about 220 pounds. So.
Do you think that if you went into a weight class that was a little bit lower, it would be a bit better for you? Next time, do you think if you do ADCC again, will you try and go into a lower weight class if they offer you the opportunity?
I mean, I think, yeah, it would be better, you know, start to warm up and stuff like that. But actually, disappointed with the decision made. But overall, it was a good experience. Those guys that do that full time. I barely trained for that fight. For that competition. Hopefully, in the next one, I'm going to go prepared for it. And I definitely got to do better.
Yeah, sure. When you say you'll go to the next one prepared, how was your preparation for this one? Did you get enough preparation in?
Nah, I even had to pull up 2 weeks before out of competition because I had like a knee issue. And I couldn't train at all. So... Even my coaches didn't want me to go over there because they said, man, you injured a little bit, you know, you should rest. But I still went, and I think my opinion, I'll be great. And that's what matters to me, hey.
I'm just curious, Hector, you know, obviously you've been working on some lead grappling for the last few months. Do you think when you come back to the UFC, there's going to be a more dangerous ground game from Hector Lombard that other welterweights can expect?
Yeah. That's my point. Before I sort of like I was going for the knockout. I used to go for a KO. Now, because this time I've been working on my ground game, I believe that if he goes to the ground, I'm not gonna just let the guy stand there. And I just gotta keep there in the floor, and I'll try to see the guy.
What about the 2016 Olympics in Rio? We know you just did some grappling competitions, obviously, to ADCC. Is it still a goal of yours to compete in the Olympics next year and represent Australia, Hector?
Unfortunately not, because next year I want to be focused on MMA. And it's too soon. I have no time to go and, you know, even if I make it to the Olympics, I don't want to just go to the Olympics, you know? I just want to go and play the medal.
Yeah, for sure.
My first Olympic, I compete like a year. I made the Olympic team in like a year and 3 months. So when I compete with those guys up there, I wasn't ready. Because I made the Olympic team less than a year and a half. So all those guys that I compete against you, they have about 4 years of preparation. So I don't want that, you know, happen to me again, you know.
Do you think that that's it with the Olympics, or do you think that maybe in the future you might even try for the 2020 Olympics when you're maybe done with MMA?
Yeah. Once I compete a lot in MMA, And I said back again, definitely I wanna do judo and BJJ. I want to do it all.
Well, it's good to hear that you're going to be.
I want to do MMA. I want to do BJJ, and not because I say it's because I can.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, it's good to hear that you're going to be active for a long time, Hector. You know, switching gears just back to the UFC, I'm just curious, what did you think when you saw UFC 93 will be at Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, Australia, and what will be a very big moment for Australian MMA fans?
Man, it's great, and trust me, I'm going to be there. And I'm not going to tell you why, but trust me, I'm going to be there.
You're not going to tell us why? What do you mean? What's your secret plan?
I can say, listen. Give me an interview next week. I'll tell you why. What about that?
All right, you can come back on the show then.
Now, well, of course, no, we'll need to find out the secret. So what you're saying is you'll be around Melbourne, you'll be around UFC 193.
Give me an interview next week, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, well, it's going to be suspenseful, but we will have you back to talk about that. Let's talk about the card. Of course, what? Let's talk about the card. Of course, Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit was the main event until it was pulled due to Robbie having a thumb injury. I'm just wondering, Hector, did you think that Carlos Condit deserved the title shot? And how do you think the fight will eventually play out between the two?
Against who?
Between Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit. You know, Robbie got the thumb injury. That was supposed to be the head.
Robbie gonna smash this guy. Robbie gonna smash him. Robbie gonna smash Carlos.
What do you think about what do you think is about Robbie's arsenal that makes him the perfect matchup for Carlos Condit? Because Carlos is a tough test. Why is he going to smash him?
He's a tough guy, you know. I mean, he imposes his will. Hey.
Do you think that Carlos Condit deserved the title shot against Robbie Lawler? Because there was a bit of discussion about maybe, you know, Johny Hendricks might have deserved it, but Carlos Condit jumped over him. Do you think Carlos deserves the title shot?
That's no part of my job. Hey, I don't run the UFC. Hopefully, like they're looking for a exciting matchup. Those two strikers, so it will be good especially for the Australian crowd. For the Australians, you have two strikers go at it. That's my opinion. I think that regardless of the two close fights that Robbie had against what's the name of it? Shit, I forgot. The two matches that Robbie had against
Johny Hendricks.
Hendricks.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The last one was a bit disappointing. He's kind of like a blanket in it. So maybe that's why. That's why maybe, I don't know, not sure, but maybe that's why they kind of like, chose to have another guy which is more excited. Remember, at the end of the day, this is entertainment, and if you're just gonna be a blanket in it, no one wants, especially the Australian crowd. You know what I mean? Australians want to see, the toughness. Such a big event. You don't want to see a blanket in it.
Well, that's true. The Aussie crowd, they definitely don't appreciate blankets. I mean, it was going to be a fantastic fight. Unfortunately, now it's off. Sorry?
You know what a blanket means?
Well, yeah, blanket is like what you would call a fighter that relies heavily on takedowns.
Right. Just stay there and whatever.
And you would feel that that's what Johny Hendricks did in the second Robbie Lawler fight, correct?
Well, and he did it after with
Matt Brown?
The other fight. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, Hector, because unfortunately, and the news is quite recent, but that fight won't be happening in Melbourne now. It's actually going to be moved because Robbie hurt his thumb. Did you know that?
Yeah.
It just happened a few weeks ago.
It's going
to be at UFC 195. So it's a fight that Australians will unfortunately miss out on, but it'll still be great to watch on TV. Now, Robbie's last fight was a classic with Rory MacDonald. I'm sure you watched it. I'm just wondering, what was your takeaway from that fight? Because until MacDonald was stopped, the judges had him winning that fight on the scorecards.
Yeah. Okay. It was a close fight. And the tougher guy won. The tougher guy won, eh? do want to have a crash. I do want to have a crash against Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it was tough. At the end of the day, he pulled out the win at the end. Right? Whatever the people say, about the fight before.
Mm.
You know, the 3 rounds or the 4 rounds before the finish, he pulled out the win. Right?
You said that you want to fight against Rory. You know, it's been well publicized that you want him next. You said that you're going to mess him up so bad that his mama isn't going to recognize him. Seems like you have some, you've got some animosity towards Rory. Where does that stem from? Can you tell us about that?
I mean, everyone is calling me up now, man.
You don't like that? You don't like
I say like, yeah, I love that. I mean, but what I don't like is like I was like a year without fight because they didn't want to fight me. Now everyone wants to fight me. Hopefully, next year when I come back, in a few months, I still have all these offers.
Mm.
Everyone wants to fight me.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because obviously fighting Rory would be the big fight. You guys were scheduled to fight each other originally. Do you think when you actually do come back, I mean, you're slated to return early next year. Do you think the UFC and Rory will agree to the fight, or do you think you'll still need to fight a guy maybe like Patrick Cote or something?
Like I said before, man, I don't run the UFC. I don't run the UFC.
You don't care. Whoever they give you, you'll fight. What did you think about Patrick Cote calling you out, though? He beat Josh Berkman recently. Is it a fight you'd be interested in?
Well, I called him up before and he didn't answer. I called him up like twice. He was nowhere to be found.
Mm.
So, whatever, man. I called him up twice. I wanted to get in the Australian card. I was looking for an opponent. I was supposed to fight Tyrone, didn't happen, and then I was keep looking for a fighter, and call him up. I called him up, and he didn't take the fight anyway, so not too sure.
Everybody's pretty excited at the possibility of you and Rory MacDonald fighting each other when you return. It's a fight that we never really got a chance to watch. I'm just wondering, Hector, if you do get a chance to fight Rory MacDonald, how do you see it playing out? How do you see yourself finishing the fight?
Yeah, I was being excited fighter. Eh? I mean, I like to stand up and bang.
Mm-hmm.
I see myself put on him, no matter where the fight goes.
Well, a lot of people have discussed the fact that Rory took some major damage in his fight against Robbie. Do you think we may possibly see a different Rory MacDonald after taking so many hard shots?
You might see a blanket. I want to say thanks to Australian fans. They've been a big supporter. I love them all, and hopefully, I can have. It's been like a curse because every single time that I wanted to fight in Australia, something happened. But hopefully, I can fight down there in the future.
Mm.
I remember when I started fighting a long time ago, like. I remember the guys used to say, "Hey, what is that? What is that sport?" I said like MMA. Everybody said like, "What?" It's been like 10 years already.
Mm.
I remember when it started. It was a long time ago. People didn't even know what the sport was. It became so big. So something that I believe that I was part of I was a big part of building the sport in Down Under.
Do you think it's going to be a sort of, almost amazing moment when you are down here for UFC 193 and you see a crowd of, hopefully 70,000 people in Etihad Stadium watching an MMA event? When you probably started out in Melbourne, it wasn't that many people that used to watch MMA. And now it's going to be 70,000 people watching an event. I mean, what kind of feelings do you think will go through your body when you see something crazy like that in November?
It's just like I just want the life to be fair, man. I want the life to be fair, like something that I believe that I built, because I'm part of it, man. Regardless of, whatever anyone says, either from CFC, FCC, IFC, and all that all together, bringing exciting fights to the fans, for years.
Mm.
And I think it's fair, now the sport is so big over there, to me to have the opportunity and the chance to fight in front of them. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I can't wait till your suspension's up and you'll have the opportunity to possibly fight for the next Melbourne card, assuming it's a success. I'm sure they'll do many more. But you bring up...
I have a surprise for you next week.
Oh man, you keep telling us the surprise. I wish it was next week already, so we could know what the surprise is. It seems like the UFC 193 card's full of surprises, but that's all right. We'll get you on next week. I'm just curious, Hector. You fought for a very long time. You mentioned how early you started out. We asked you before about Rory MacDonald if he looked different. It's easy for us to speculate, but after being a fighter for so long and being in so many tough sparring sessions, have you noticed any issues from some of the headshots you've taken before? Have you noticed a difference in yourself?
I'm trying to eat and don't get hit. Hey, I was a bit stupid before. Like 4 years ago, I would go toe to toe and start sparring with heavyweights and try to beat each other up in sparring. But I have to be a bit smart because you can take so much hit. But before I was like a bit stupid, and I would spar anybody, any heavyweight. I would spar kickboxers, anyone. I used to spar with Condit. I would spar with Hunt. I would spar with anybody.
Wow. Yeah.
Condit. You know who Condit is, right?
Yeah.
Nathan Corbett.
Mm-hmm.
I would spar with anyone. And now I become a bit smarter. I don't want to spar not those heavy guys. They definitely would end your career quick.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's amazing. You would have had so many crazy stories from sparring, and you told us the one about you and Josh Barnett. I'm just wondering, thinking back on all those sparring battles that you've had, what's the one that stands out in your mind as a battle that you've had, a sparring session that you've had with like a guy like a Mark Condit or a big fighter like that?
Mark Hunt, he was trying to knock me off. He couldn't.
Who, Badahari?
I remember Mark Hunt.
Okay, yeah.
That was the first sparring that we did. Maori Moore. I don't know if you know him. Freaking guy is huge.
Mm-hmm.
About 300 pounds, maybe 350. He won the Kai One. He won the Kai One championships.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. And I remember that he just wanted to knock me out. And over the summer, I came out with the jab and I dropped him.
Oh wow.
But he was kind of like he wanted to hurt me. Hey, stuff like that. I remember when Josh Barnett, we were sparring. We were sparring for about an hour and something, and then he kind of like he gave up. Stories like that. Yeah. But I'm just lucky that I keep going because after all this hard sparring and stuff, I'm lucky to stay in the game.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you're still going, and once you come back, there's a big possibility you may be fighting. I mean, you might get Rory MacDonald, you might be getting Patrick Cote, or you might be fighting one of the winners or losers of Johny Hendricks versus Tyron Woodley from UFC 192. Now, Tyron is saying he's going to beat Hendricks convincingly. How do you see this fight playing out? And are you still open to fighting Tyron or Hendricks when you return?
Yeah, I'm open. Why not in Australia? Come on, you have to go. You have to get me on in Australia. I beg you to get me on in Australia, mate. Actually, it's sad, mate. I only fought there once when I fought Powerhouse.
Yep, remember.
That was a good one, mate.
And they almost didn't let you have the Australian flag in the cage.
Oh, yeah. You see how depressing I was?
Yeah.
I was depressed. I was like, give me the freaking flag, hey.
Yeah.
I ended up grabbing the flag, and I love Australia, mate. And coming back, going to Australia next week. So if you guys wanted to do some interviews, I'm gonna be there. I can actually come in person and meet up with you guys, whatever. But I'm gonna be down in Australia and not this week, the week after.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait to see you, Hector. I mean, I guess
We can go for coffee or. Sangreco is one of my buddies. Sangreco is one of my friends. So we can meet over there at Don Camilo's. He's a good friend of mine. We used to train together. Freaking legend, Sangreco. So we can meet up there, and he has a beautiful restaurant. He has all his trophies down there. He has a lot of memories at his cafe.
Well, for those who don't know, Sam Greco, he's got his own cafe, so we can meet up, we can have a few lattes, you can show us a few judo throws, and it'll be a good hangout session. But either way, it seems like you've penciled yourself in there for next week, Hector, so I guess we'll chat to you next week. In the meantime, guys, don't forget to follow Hector on Twitter at Hector Lombard. Hector, it's been a pleasure having you back on the show, and we'll be chatting soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. See you soon.
Hey guys, this is Chad Money Mendez, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
And there you guys have it, Hector Lombard, a real character from Australian MMA. He's not born here, but we've adopted him, much like many other people. Cass, Russell Crowe, I believe he's actually a Kiwi, but we've adopted him as well.
Mel Gibson as well. He lived here for a bit.
He's ours. Don't try and take him back, America. He's ours.
I don't mind if they take Mel Gibson back. He's done
I think
some
they're
stuff.
trying to. I think what happened at the start was everybody wanted Mel Gibson for themselves, and then when what happened. Now we're trying to palm him back off.
Yeah, nobody wants Mel Gibson now. He's a man with no country. We're like, Mel Gibson, you're so ours. And then he went off about the Jews, and we're like, you know what? He never was Australian. Yeah, and America's like, but I don't think he was American either. We're like, okay, well, I guess he can just live on an island then.
Oh, yeah, we love it. We love adopting people here. So there you guys go. And now, Cass, I mean, just recently, UFC 191 Johnson versus Dodson 2. The event is officially in the books. A big break for MMA fighters when it comes to watching cards back-to-back. Fans sort of got an experience where they've gotten a chance to sort of chill out and have a couple of weekends to themselves. So it's kind of a cool experience to sort of miss an event again. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's not something that happens very often, but like to say that there was a bit of a break, I mean, really, we had a week break. And not really, because Bellator 141 happened last week. Didn't do an episode last week. We were enjoying the rest of the snow season. A certain wrist got broken. Good times. But like back in the day, a break would be, I don't know, like 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I remember like back in the day, there'd be like at least a month between events. And now we're calling a week a break. It just shows how much MMA there is.
I just don't know what we would have done back in the day when it was one event a month. Like, I don't know what we would have talked about in our episodes in the weeks between that. It would have been like super breakdowns in every fight. Super in depth, yeah.
You know what we'd have to do? We'd have to like do one fight per episode. Like after a month, we'd only have broken down 4 fights.
Oh man, that's hilarious. But there you go. I mean, you put it down perfectly. 1 week, but it felt like a lifetime. So I was very excited to see an event back in the UFC, in UFC 191 with some quality fights there. Cass, where are we kicking off the breakdown today? Where are we kicking it off?
I want to talk about Raquel Pennington and Jessica Andrade. This is a really fun fight. Raquel Pennington, really trying to get back on the horse. Andrade really trying to plant her flag in the UFC. It was a very back and forth fight. A lot of the damage was caused in the clinch. Both girls hurting each other. The end of the fight, it was a good fight to begin with, but the end of the fight just put it over the top. At 25 seconds left in the second round, Raquel Pennington was on top, standing over Jessica Andrade, and had Jessica stacked. You wouldn't even really call it a guard at all. 2 seconds left, Jessica Andrade tapped out to a rear naked choke. It was an awesome finish. Jessica basically created space. She did a good job creating space. She pushed Raquel away with her feet. She was looking to escape. It wasn't really so much a scramble as Raquel Pennington taking Jessica's back straight away. Unfortunately, Jessica didn't protect herself or her head. Raquel got her hooks in, and she got the rear naked choke straight under the chin pretty much straight away, and got the rear naked choke with only 2 seconds left on her birthday. Does it get any better than that?
does not get any better than that. And of course, she avenged her UFC 171 loss to Jessica as well. So killing two sexy birds with one stone.
Right.
I mean, Raquel is someone who's actually been impressing me as of late. And I know that her last fight was a loss to Holly Holm, Cass. But is it just me, or were you impressed as well with her performance against Holly Holm in that fight?
Well, I think a lot of the discussion in that Holly Holm fight was that Holly Holm was a little bit underwhelming, and Raquel Pennington did a lot better than a lot of people expected, especially considering that Holly Holm was, you know, we all know her striking accolades, her boxing accolades, her kickboxing accolades, and Raquel Pennington, no one's really seen her as an elite striker. She's not a girl that goes in and knocks people out straight away. She's got two now last-second chokes, and I think people thought Holly Holm was going to go in there and destroy Raquel Pennington, and Raquel Pennington actually made it a very competitive fight. It remains to be seen how far she'll go into the UFC. I believe her record is 6-6 at the moment, but she's calling it her revenge tour. Look, she puts on exciting fights. Regardless of what you think about her skills, she puts on very exciting fights.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Jessica Andrade, she's ranked number 13th, and Raquel's not ranked in the top 15. So hopefully that means an entry for her in the top 15, and who knows what's going to happen from her in the future. But good to see her get back on there. And of course, Andrade, she took this fight on late notice as well, Cass. So don't know how much of a factor that was for her, but always obviously a factor. Proper preparation is really important for the fighters.
I like watching Jessica Andrade fight as well. I want to move on. Let's talk about Francisco Rivera versus John Lineker. I'm just going to say, when I hear John Lineker's name, I'm always surprised that he's Brazilian. John Lineker sounds like a guy who's like in the NFL in a way. He's like 350 pounds and he's like a defensive lineman. I wouldn't think that he's like a tiny Brazilian guy. But holy shit, that was a crazy, crazy first round. For those who didn't see it, make sure you do see it. I think 98% of that fight was hooks. And that's just a statistic that I'm pulling out of my ass. But that's what it felt like to me. There were two exchanges, especially, where both guys were just throwing. I mean, these were like those crazy Vanderlei silver hooks. I think John Lineker was winding up from like the back of his head, from the floor, basically. And Francisco Rivera doing the same thing. I thought, because Francisco Rivera, he's really been coming into his own recently, and he looked really good against Uriah Faber in that first round before that unfortunate eye poke. And I thought, you know what? Given the size difference, I thought Lineker's got a good chance if he goes to the body and he wears him down and he uses his power. But I didn't think he'd get the job done so quickly. I thought Rivera was going to go in there and really stay composed, stay calm. I think he's matured a lot. I think he was going to keep the distance. And I didn't expect it to be over so quickly, and that was just insane. Both guys threw. It was, as Joe Rogan says, it was a war of attrition. It was like watching a car crash, and it's horrible, but you can't look away. And I think that's what was going through these guys' minds. It was like they were taking so much damage. There was absolutely zero head movement. It was just shot after shot, and yet neither guy wanted to, I guess, back out of the exchange. What did you think of this fight, Dennis?
Yeah, it was absolutely nuts. I mean, you put it down perfectly. Some crazy exchanges, and Fox Sports put out like not a GIF, but a little video of the fight. It's like 60 seconds long. And if you watch that, if you don't get a chance to watch the fights and you just watch that one video that goes 60 seconds, you get like a huge battle that's just compressed into 60 seconds. It's just unbelievable. I thought it was great. I agree with you, Cass. Francisco did get drawn into that gunslinging war that Lineker was providing. So, I mean, maybe the smart money for him would have been to sort of back away and not get drawn in. But for the fans, it was definitely a great moment and really got the event going. I mean, Pennington had that great win. Now Lineker has this great win. And a lot of people wondering about Lineker as well. You know, with him cutting weight, obviously he used to be at flyweight. There's an interesting story there as well. People think he's out of the woods because he is now in bantamweight, but really, people might not know this. When he spoke to MMAfighting.com, he said he still needs to cut 30 pounds to fight at 135 pounds. He used to cut 40 to fight at flyweight. He also said that size won't be an issue for him at 135 pounds, and it certainly doesn't look like it was during this event. And he also said that he only cut down to 125 pounds for the opportunity to fight in the UFC. This is when the division was new in the UFC and they were looking for fighters. He had a good record, so he got signed. So it seems like he's quite happy to stay in bantamweight.
Yeah, it seems like he's a natural super heavyweight. The guy's 5'3" and has a pretty small reach. He's very good at covering distance, so I expect to see a pretty good John Lineker in the future. I mean, this fight, it happened so quickly that it is still hard to see how he'll do against other bantamweights. One thing we can definitely see is that his power has certainly translated. He's like the Anthony Rumble Johnson of bantamweight, but without the size. Because Anthony Rumble Johnson is still a really big light heavyweight, whereas John Lineker is actually a small bantamweight. But he packs a lot of power, and clearly he's able to knock guys out at his higher weight class. I think he's going to be a lot more healthier now that he's not as drained. 30 pounds, though, that is a lot of weight to cut. I mean, if you're cutting 20, that's a fair bit. 30 pounds, and especially at those lower weight classes, like if you're cutting 30 pounds and you're at heavyweight or you're at light heavyweight, it may not be as much. But when you're making 135 and you're cutting 30, my maths isn't that good, so I don't know what exactly percentage of your body weight that is, but that's a big chunk. I mean, that's got to be like at least, 99% of your body weight.
Yep.
I was super impressed. John Lineker, the way he fought, it was very much a John Lineker fight. Rivera, like I mentioned, he should have kept the distance. He wasn't able to do so. I'm interested to see how he does against an opponent who, I guess, is more game plan heavy and really keeps the distance. Because like I said, he doesn't have the biggest reach. He's tiny. He's like, I think 5'2" or 5'3", very small for the weight class. I'm excited about John Lineker. I hope he keeps knocking people out, but I'm curious how he does against the bigger opponents, the guys who might take him down, frustrate him, and really keep him at bay.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, Francisco Rivera, he was ranked number 12th in the bantamweight division. To the naked eye, it seems like bantamweight's packed, but really it's sort of the top 6, 7, 8 guys who are really well known. All the other guys are sort of on the way out. Eddie Wineland, guys like that. So very interesting. But I think Uriah Faber might have a smile on his face knowing that there's at least another big name for him to possibly fight at some point, because the guy runs out of opponents, and Lineker's a guy that people love watching. So it's great to have another personality in the division. I think as many personalities as you can get into bantamweight helps the division the most, especially with Cruz and his injuries. Uriah Faber sort of bouncing around. Michael McDonald just, sort of coming back sort of soon. You got Brian Caraway, he fights here and there. So it's good to have another sort of big name that people like to watch in bantamweight.
It's very true. Well, I mean, the funny thing is that no division needs it more than flyweight. I mean, really, especially after what we saw tonight, and considering that John Lineker was on the cusp of a title shot. Many thought, was he going to get a title shot? He was pretty much in there, except the fact that he missed weight. So, but yeah, no, look, I agree with you as far as Uriah Faber goes. I mean, it's not to say that John Lineker could necessarily beat Uriah Faber, but hey, he's hot right now, and Uriah Faber needs opponents that are hot right now.
And just finally on him, the weight cut might still be an issue for him. We don't know, because he is still cutting a huge amount of weight. So I'm hoping that, he makes the weight his next few fights, because the last thing we want to see him do is get moved up another division by the UFC and start all over again.
Yeah, 2016, he will be fighting Anthony Rumble Johnson. He will be a light heavyweight. Paige Van Zandt versus Alex Chambers. This is a really big fight on the card. For Australia, of course, you had Australian Alex Chambers, and then you got Paige Van Zandt, who is the current UFC It Girl, one of the few people who got an exclusive Reebok deal, much to the frustration of someone like Carla Esparza, the former UFC strawweight champion. A lot of people were saying, why is Paige Van Zandt getting this deal? Why is she getting the Reebok deal? I mean, she's not even a champion. She's, barely ranked. I mean, she's the UFC It Girl. She's a good-looking girl. She's a model, and she's exactly what Reebok are looking for. Before we talk about the fight, what do you think about that and Paige Van Zandt being the UFC's It Girl?
I was one of those people that was a bit like, I don't know if I like it. There's other fighters that achieve more. And me, Casper, I'm all about like, this person deserves this, and I don't like this person jumping over there.
You're like
I'm like the Batman of like the UFC, just running around trying to save everyone. But I got to say, when she was coming out to fight today, I was watching her very, very closely, and she had a smile on her face. She was relaxed, and when she got to the octagon, and the referee was patting her down, fixing her up, putting everything on there, and she was with the corner, she just made everybody smile, and she has this vibe about her, like a special quality. Like if she got in a room, I don't know, she'd like light up the room in a silly kind of way. And certain people have that quality. They have that star quality when they just sort of get in a place. And we've all been there. We've sort of gone out with those people. They're that one person who you always want to bring out to the pub or the bar with you, because you know the night's going to be good. And you can see that from her. It just emulates from her. And now I see why Reebok signed her. She's a really, really special athlete. And she carries herself in a certain way that not many people could. Usually people rock up to the cage, they're angry as hell, Like, you don't want to get in their way. And she's like laughing, having jokes. Everybody's having a good time. I think Martin Kampman looked like, a high school 16-year-old girl. He was so happy when he was coming out of it. Everyone was just smiling. It felt like everyone was going to skip to the ring. Didn't feel like a fight. It felt like a momentous occasion where everyone was celebrating. So there's something really special about her. And I think, they've hit the button on the head. Not only is she amazing looking, I mean, a lot of people are, but they don't have that personality. She really seems like she's got that award-winning personality as well.
Yeah, no, personality definitely goes a long way, but I think it's also the fact that she used to be a model, and I've never been a model, but I think, when it comes to like show business and being in front of a camera and being in front of TV and crew, they always kind of say it is always about not necessarily your physical looks, but just having a certain look on your face, and I think smiling is a really important one. And the psychology behind smiling, I'm not saying that Paige Van Zandt, goes to training and works on her looks and is like, all right, this is smile camp, 6 weeks of smile camp. But the psychology behind it is you trust people more when they smile. And you can think back to, like, I don't know, if you meet someone and they're standing there and they look like a rapist, you're probably not going to trust them. But if they got a nice smile on their face, psychologically, you kind of think to yourself, like, okay, I trust this person. They seem, pretty harmless. They seem pretty open. And I think the thing is, like, just because you're a good fighter doesn't mean you're marketable. I think there's a lot of fighters in the UFC that are fantastic fighters, some of the best fighters, but they may not necessarily be the most marketable. I think that's the reason why Paige Van Zandt got it, as opposed to, certain straws. I mean, hey, look at Demetrius Johnson, fantastic fighter, but if there's, this is not me being a dick to Demetrius Johnson, but if you look at the numbers, clearly marketability is a factor. Anyway, let's talk about the fight itself. A few things that I noticed. Van Zandt's pressure. She hit a really nice hip toss on Alex Chambers in the first round. Alex Chambers couldn't get out of the clinch. Van Zandt had her up against the cage. She was using her forearms to frame Alex Chambers, and anytime Alex Chambers went left or right, Van Zandt will basically hit her with shots, whether it was to the body or to the head. It almost reminded me of like a Cain Velasquez fight. I'm not saying they're necessarily on the same level, but just that constant, relentless pressure and putting people up against the cage and just absolutely bullying them, making them hate life and making them not want to be there. And I was actually a lot more impressed with Van Zandt than I was originally against Felice Herrig. I don't know, maybe I was in shock, but I just feel like that fight against Felice Herrig, I saw someone who had a lot of potential, a lot of promise, but wasn't necessarily polished. I feel like she won with her heart. This time, it seemed like Van Zandt used a lot of technique, and it was absolutely brutal. In saying that, though, I have to mention Felice is by far the stiffer test. So, with all due respect to Alex Chambers, I do think the UFC put her there for Paige Van Zandt to get a win. And Alex Chambers, if you look at rankings-wise, she was, on paper, the easier fight than Felice Herrig. What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Absolutely, Cass. And, the thing is, with Alex, we spoke to her on the show, and she's a great girl. But in the fight, from the very get-go, you just didn't get much confidence from her. She just looked kind of slumped over and didn't look very confident in her abilities. And as the fight went on, you just saw the little bit of confidence that she had just got drawn out of her, and she had some moments with some counter shots where Paige left her face open, and she needs to work on that. I mean, with some top-level opponents, she's got to be careful in those clinch areas where they might land some overhand crosses to her face. But overall, she was very, very impressive. I was very impressed with the way that she fought. I was also impressed with Chambers and her heart. There were a couple of moments in that fight I felt like she could have just dropped down to the ground and stayed down there, but she got back up. She kept fighting. That was very, very impressive. I do think, though, that the pressure of this fight, everybody's sort of looking at her. And look, we mentioned this to her, Cass, and it's not a pretty word, but sacrificial lamb. We mentioned it to a lot of people looking at her as a sacrificial lamb being thrown in there, like you mentioned with Paige Van Zandt. And maybe that got into her head leading into it. But she just did not look very confident, and she was moving back way too much. She wasn't holding wasn't holding her position. She was off balance a lot of the time when she was moving backwards as well, which didn't help her. And then she was up against the cage where Paige was dominating her. So it was another great win for Paige. But, yeah, when it comes to Alex, a lot of hard, but she just couldn't do very much against it.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I have to commend Alex for her toughness, because you're right, there were a lot of times where she did get badly hurt, and you thought, oh, this could be over, and she kept, she was relentless with trying to stay in the fight, and I think that's just what Paige Van Zandt's pressure does to you. It seems to wilt opponents, and, before this fight, basically zero critics were giving Alex Chambers a chance in this fight. Sometimes you have amazing moments where underdogs come, have this big come from behind victory. And in this case, it played out pretty much exactly like a lot of people predicted. It's also an impressive finish considering that Alex Chambers' strengths were on the ground. And people said if there's any chance of Alex Chambers winning, it would be on the ground with the come from behind victory. So the fact that Paige Van Zandt ended up getting into mount and getting that armbar, it was a really nice exclamation point on an already dominant fight.
Yeah, certainly. And, she's ranked number 7th in the division. I like how the UFC aren't rushing her along too soon and just throwing her in the title picture. I'd like to see her have a few more fights, get a bit more experience, and then who knows, when she's ready for Joanna, that could be a great fight. And also, if she does become champion, obviously, she could be a very, very big star and a huge deal for the strawweight division. So a lot of potential with Paige. I can't believe she's so young, so charismatic, so relaxed. I mean, yeah, she's just impressing me on all levels at the moment.
That's actually a really good point because, a lot of young people seem to have a lot of pressure, but the fact that Paige Van Zandt is so happy. If it was me, if I was a fighter and I was like 21 years old, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I'd be so nervous and stressed. I think a lot of people, I think that stress and that pressure never really goes away, but as they mature, they find better ways to handle it. And it seems like Paige Van Zandt already has a really good grasp on that.
Yeah, certainly. So, well, I don't know. I'm looking at the ranking cast. I'm not sure who they're going to give her next. There's some interesting fights in there. I know there's some big fights happening soon, but whoever they give her, I'm just excited to see how she develops next. There's no doubt about it. She's got areas that she needs to work on, but I think Team Alpha Male as well is a great camp for her to grow. So I have a lot of belief in her coaches, and I'm excited to see how she keeps progressing. If she keeps progressing and evolving the way that she is, who knows? She could be like a John Jones-esque female fighter in the strawweight division. She could be one of those next level kind of athletes. So we'll see what happens.
Well, it may seem silly to say that now, but considering how young she has, we haven't seen where her ceiling is. So who knows? You may very well be right. She's got a lot of room to grow. Let's talk about the next fight: Corey Anderson versus Jan Błachowicz, fellow Polak. The crazy thing is, right? Jan Błachowicz was originally supposed to fight Rumble Johnson. The way he went up against Corey Anderson and lost, you got to be thinking it's a good thing that they switched to Jimmy Manuwa. You know what I mean? Jan Błachowicz, he's on paper he had a lot of advantages. He was by far the better striker, especially technically. He's a good kickboxer. Corey Anderson, product of The Ultimate Fighter, winner of The Ultimate Fighter. He's not necessarily the guy who has the best wrestling. He's very content to strike. He doesn't have the fastest takedown, but where Jan sort of goes wrong, he doesn't have the highest output. And for a guy who isn't necessarily the most busiest, he really does pick his shots. He's very, very patient, almost to a fault. And for a guy who fights like that, he basically gassed after, I think it was the first round. It was really unfortunate. The fight started off pretty decently for Jan. He was looking for his money kick, the left kick to the body, the same one that hurt Ilir Latifi. He landed, I believe, at least 2 or 3 times in the fight. There was a close armbar from Jan in that first round that was partially stopped by the fence or the cage. And then afterwards, when he came out for the second round, I don't know what happened. It was like he was a completely different man. Corey got on top of him, grinded him out. One of the biggest criticisms of Corey Anderson is that when he gets on top of guys, he's just a blanket. He wasn't in this fight. He was a lot more busy. There was great ground and pound, especially when he got Jan in half guard. Great elbows from the top. Just a lot more active than usual. And then, Jan was going for Kimuras every time Corey went for a takedown. I think he was trying to pull a bit of a Husma Palhares, but it didn't work out. It just seemed like by the end of the fight, Jan was looking for a Hail Mary comeback win and was basically in defensive mode. What was your take on this fight, Dennis?
Yeah, absolutely crazy. And one of the things I was thinking about Corey Anderson was, he came out like he had a fire lit under his ass. And I thought, why would that be? Why would he be acting so? And then I sort of looked at his record and I remembered he had his first ever loss in his career was his last fight in April against Volante.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? That could be the reason. He lost that fight. He thought, damn, sort of a reality check. What do I want to do in this sport? Do I want to be a champion? And he came out in this fight, all guns firing. I thought that comment that you said about Rumble Johnson was hilarious. I was thinking the very same thing as well, Cass. It was exactly as you put it. It was a beatdown from the second round onwards. And Jan, I don't know about that Kimura. He kept grabbing that Kimura and Corey was smashing him in the head because his face was open when he was grabbing it. So it was a great display by Corey Anderson. I think he hasn't really been on people's radar. I mean, he's won the Ultimate Fighter and he's had some good wins, but I think this is the win that really puts him on everybody's radar. I think people are going to start looking out for this kid. He's a young guy. He's only 25 years old, believe it or not. He looks a little bit older, but he's only 25 years old, and he hasn't been in the sport for a huge amount of time. His first fight was in 2013. So very interesting to see what happens with the next. But yeah, big loss for Jan. Afterwards, he had that big hematoma on his head as well, and it took him a little bit of time to get up. Obviously, a lot of punches taken. I'm hoping that he's okay.
Oh, it took him a long time to get up. I'm wondering whether there was some kind of other factors like an injury or something happened, because he seemed strangely gassed. Like I don't know why that was. Like it wasn't like the first round was a crazy round. He just seemed a lot more tired considering how the fight went. I think with Corey Anderson, this is a great fight on a really big stage. I don't know if I'd call this his signature win though. It was a good fight. I think he needs, I think the next win, if he does it convincingly, it might be his signature win, just purely because Jan, at this point, he's a prospect who thus far has just been a little bit underwhelming, and he's just not as big a name. It was still a decent win, though. So I'm curious what they do with him in the future.
Oh, yeah, certainly. And, the UFC happy that one of their Ultimate Fighters is doing decently. Obviously, some Ultimate Fighters not really doing that well, and then the show kind of looks stupid afterwards. So it's nice to see there's a young kid who may have a big future in the division. Now, Cass, speaking of the guy that Jan was initially supposed to fight, Anthony Johnson, he fought Jimmy Manuwa instead. And Jimmy is a guy that's well known around the world for his KO power, his striking. He hasn't lost many fights. I believe he only lost one fight leading into this one. What did you think when you saw that Jimmy was going to fight him instead of Jan? Did you get more excited, or did you want to see Jan fight him instead?
No, I was like, Jimmy's in. Wow, what a terrific audience. I was like, this is, I thought Jimmy Manuel was the better option, especially considering that Jan lost to Jimmy. And I just think, Jimmy was on a higher level. He's only lost coming up against Alexander Gustafsson. I still picked Rumble Johnson in this fight, but I thought that at least Jimmy, there's more of an opportunity for fireworks in this fight. I thought given Jan being content to sort of hang back and try and counter and having a low output, I just thought if Rumble Johnson starts pressuring him, it's going to be really bad news for Jan. With Jimmy, I can see the fight being a little bit more competitive. The wrestling obviously was definitely to Rumble Johnson's favor and his advantage. I was impressed. I liked seeing him get the takedown really early on, even though he was having success on the feet. I don't think he needed to go for the takedown, but I like that he did. Hey, look, it's MMA. You got to do anything to win. I know the crowd was booing. They were pretty frustrated. They got up pretty much just in time, but I was impressed with how patient Rumble was when they got on the ground. Once it stood up, Rumble did Rumble. He came and he knocked out Jimmy Manuwa. That's a big win. I know Jimmy Manuwa's been knocked out before, but he's still a very tough test. And I think it was a great stoppage, even though Jimmy seemed pretty unhappy. From where I was sitting, my couch, it looked like Jimmy he didn't really know where he was. I think he was upset, but it seemed like a very good stoppage from what I saw.
Yeah, certainly. I thought that as well. I had to watch the replay a couple of times, and I thought the ref did a great job because that next shot, I think that would have been potentially the shot that could have really damaged his brain. He got rocked with that first shot, he fell down, and that second shot, I think that third shot would have been the one that really put him out. And as we all know, after the initial knockout, the shots that hit you after that are actually the ones that cause the brain damage, which is the reason why boxing is a lot worse than MMA in terms of people with brain damage, is because you get the 10 count. A lot of guys say they can keep fighting, and then they fight and they get hit in the head, and then they get the brain damage. But at MMA, you get stopped a lot of the time when you get that initial KO and you don't get any more shots, hopefully, after it. And that's what happened to Jimmy. Yeah, very impressed with Anthony. When he came out for the fight, he looked like he was on fire as well. He must have him and Corey Anderson must have been drinking the same juice backstage. When I saw his face coming out to the octagon, I thought, yeah, this is why I'd never be a fighter. Could you imagine standing in an octagon, having a guy like that rush towards you?
Same thoughts.
He was not messing around when he was coming out there, obviously dealing with a lot of issues and, wanting to show the world that he's still got it. One of the things I'm a little bit worried about with Anthony and he's just such a huge guy. Like, I look at him, I'm like, how did this guy ever fight in welterweight? It just blows my mind. But one of the things I'm sort of still a bit worried with him is just his cardio. After the first round, a lot of deep breaths. He did look a little bit gassed. I wonder, Cass, how much cardio can you get when you're a guy as big as Anthony and you got those huge muscles? What can he do from a perspective of cardio? Do you think he needs to drop some muscle? Is there anything he can do? Because obviously he trains hard.
I mean, he can lose muscle. I think with Anthony Johnson, it's not so much his muscle, it's the fact that he's very explosive. I think the best thing that he can do is just be as calm as possible in a fight. I mean, as calm as you can be. It is a fight after all. And just pacing. And I think that's why when he took him down on the ground, he took Jimmy down on the ground, I liked that he wasn't rushing, he wasn't, as the saying goes, blowing his wad. He wasn't pulling a Shane Carwin. I mean, maybe he could have gotten the finish, I don't know, but he wasn't going to risk it. He wasn't going to try and go all guns blazing just because he had him on the ground. I think for Rumble Johnson, it's all about being smart. I think having all that muscle is partly what makes Anthony Rumble Johnson Rumble Johnson. I don't think he could really lose too much muscle. Yeah, I do agree that there is a ceiling. You can only have a certain what is it, VO2 max. You can only have a certain amount of cardio. But I mean, look at Daniel Cormier. I mean, he's got quite a bit of muscle on there. He's a short guy. He's a stocky guy. You wouldn't think he would have a decent amount of cardio. I really just think it's more about being calm and relaxed.
Yeah, no, great points there. So, and an interesting thing as well, Anthony Johnson obviously beat Andrei Arlovski at one point when both guys were out of the company. That's hilarious as well. But now a great win for Anthony Johnson. An interview where he sort of said to all the haters or whatever that, he proved them wrong. This was for them. And yeah, interesting to see what happens with the whole Anthony Johnson case. Hopefully he's able to come out the other end. Obviously a lot of allegations there, but a big win for him. And he's in an interesting position as well, Cass, because obviously Daniel Cormier beat him, but he's sort of up at the top of the division. I guess if John Jones came back, I'd really love to see him fight John Jones possibly, but he's just a guy that you can really slot into any card and, expect a huge knockout. So a great addition to the UFC roster, and it's good to see him get a win.
Well, yeah, you mentioned about all the allegations and the controversy pre-fight. Afterwards, there's a few cheeky tweets out there on Twitter. They're on our Twitter at the moment. We retweeted them. Our boy Elias Cepeda of Fox Sports, he was sitting there in press row, and Jeremy Botter, also of Bleacher Report, both pretty much tweeted the same things. Here's Elias' tweet: Rumble just walked by media row and told us to not be a bitch about it and write some good stuff about him. Well, does this count? And then Jeremy Botter: Rumble Johnson comes by media row and tells the media to write some more on that shit, then points at me and says, "You too." Cool, bro. Jeremy Botter.
Well, I guess if Anthony Johnson walks past you and he says it, you do it. I don't think you ignore the man. But I agree with him. He had a great win. And even though he's got a lot of things that he's dealing with and that are being investigated, it's innocent until proven guilty. And he's just done something really, really good in the octagon. So there should be some positive outcomes and some positive articles written about him.
Yeah, I feel like Anthony Rumble Johnson, like if you're working drive-through in like McDonald's and then you try and upsize him, like, oh, do you want a large meal for 50 cents or do you want an apple pie for $1? He'd be like, the apple pie is free. And he'd be like, yeah, you're right, the apple pie is free.
And then you put your car keys in the paper bag with the cheeseburger.
Yeah, pretty much. Let's talk about the next fight. Andrei Arlovski versus Frank Mir. We've got a few polls on submissionradio.com. We've got this little thing where we put up some fancy pictures and some polls, and you tell us what you think. And one of the polls is about what fight you are most excited for UFC 191. And I think Arlovski versus Mir was pretty high up there. For me personally, I was really looking forward to the main event, but this was a close second. I was really, really excited about this fight. I know that the background to this one was that you didn't really want to see Frank Mir versus Arlovski go against each other. They both had really come back in terms of career resurgence, and just two guys that you really didn't want to see either one of them derailed. Unfortunately, the fight didn't live up to expectations. What was your take? Were you excited for this fight, Dennis, and did it play out how you expected?
Well, yeah, when you were talking about fights that people were looking forward to, that was definitely one of the fights I was looking forward to the most. And then the weigh-ins came, and then I saw Frank Mir step up on the scale at 266, and I was like, it doesn't matter how low you wear your shorts. When you're 266, you're 266, man. Cass, and I don't want to, be mean to Frank Mir or people who are a bit bigger, but I just don't understand if you go through a training camp for a fight and you work out hard, how you can be over the heavyweight limit by 1 pound. I mean, I understand he's a heavyweight and he must not really watch his diet, but you're versing a guy like Arlovsky, who's a great boxer and who's coming in at a much lighter weight than you. You'd think that you'd try and drop some weight and not just sort of stay at that ridiculous weight. And I mean, he just looked really big. His gut was hanging over his shorts. It was not an impressive sight. He didn't look like a professional fighter when he was walking into that ring. And it was just, you just wonder, at this point in his career when he's older, and this is sort of his last run, wouldn't you want to get in the best shape he can possibly, to make the most of it? I don't know. What did you think of Frank Mir's shape? Before we talk about the fight, what did you think of the shape that Frank Mir came into the fight with?
You sort of triggered something. When you said get in the best shape of his life, it reminds me of that South Park episode where Randy is training to fight people at the baseball games, and he's like, I have to get in the best shape of my life. And then it shows him like waking up at like 5 a.m. with like his Rocky jogging suit, and then he goes downstairs and he cracks a couple of eggs, and he thinks he's going to drink them raw, and then he pours them in the frying pan, has a beer, and then farts. Look, I don't know. Here's the funny thing though, right, about Frank Mir's shape. It sure isn't pretty. I was Google imaging Frank Mir just for some tweets. I don't even remember what I was tweeting. And there was a picture there, and I imagine it's got to be from Middle Easy because that font is just so recognizable. It's a picture of Frank Mir, and it was like, what to expect when you're expecting. The thing about Frank Mir is, though, since he doesn't look in great shape, but he's been fighting well. That's the crazy thing. Since he's gotten into this Frank Mir, what are we on, 3.0, 4.0? He's had a few versions. He's had the skinny Frank Mir. He's had the fat Frank Mir when he came back from the injury. Then he had the bodybuilding Frank Mir. Then he had the Uber Frank Mir after the Lesnar loss where he got really big. Then he had the Greg Jackson's Frank Mir, which was like, I'm skinny again. And now it's like, I don't know, this is like 5 or 6.0. Version 6.0. He's got the firmware update, and he's pretty big these days. I don't know, maybe there's a theory to it. I definitely think being really, really muscly was not good for Frank Mir. He was extremely slow. He had bad cardio. He wasn't moving well. I mean, the theory is, muscle takes cardio, takes oxygen to breathe. Fat doesn't. I don't know. He's been moving well. He's been looking good. I think it's just like I think he trains hard. I just don't think he watches what he eats. You can go and spend 8 hours in the gym, but if you go to the drive-thru afterwards, I'm not saying that Frank Mir's eating burgers, but if you go and eat crap afterwards, you're going to get fat. You're going to put on body fat. So, no. I'm not as alarmed as I was against Todd Duffy when Frank Mir fought, because even though he got a good win, he was absolutely gassed after that fight. And I was like, man, what if the fight went any longer? Look, I'm just going to talk about the fight. You say Frank Mir got big. What about Arlovsky? Don't you think he looked small? He looked like he lost heaps of muscle.
Yeah, he looked very small.
If you see the footage of him winning the heavyweight title back in the day, I mean, physique-wise, he was like an Adonis. He was like a Belarusian god carved out of granite or something even harder. And he looked really small. He just, I don't know whether he was sick, but he looked like a guy who had a flu beforehand. Okay, talking about the fight, Arlovsky, he was good at getting in and out at the start. He was measuring with the jab and he was throwing with the right. The thing is, Mir was expecting it, and Mir was basically putting his head down and powering forward with hooks. He caught Arlovsky quite a few times, trying to put him up against the cage. I don't know why Mir goes and tries to put guys up against the cage, though, because it just seems like he always gets reversed, and he usually gets punished in the cage. I will say, though, Frank was very wise to go for body shots once he had him on the ground. I've been impressed with Frank Mir's ground and pound. I mean, extra body fat or not, I mean, he looks pretty dangerous on the ground. I'm not talking about grappling-wise. I'm talking about even his ground and pound. That's something that we've never really seen or feared from Frank Mir before. It was smart of Arlovsky to stall and not be risky once he had him on the ground. I actually think that was a good thing. There's no point of trying to pull anything fancy and sneaky against Frank Mir. He might grab your leg and break it. He might grab your arm and break it. Actually, I think that was the best option for Andre Arlovsky, to just hold him close and hope that he gets stood up, which is exactly what happened. Not only that, but I think by then he was already starting to gas. And I think, man, Andre Arlovsky really, really gassed, like Jan Błachowicz gassed. But I think a lot of that had to do with the body shots that Frank Mir hit, on the ground. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, it could be a factor. I mean, I was wondering why he was so gassed. It almost looked like they were fighting in Mexico at one point. Had to check the location, but I'm not sure. Yeah, that could be a good point. Maybe he hurt his rib or something. He's having issues breathing.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I don't know. I was like, maybe he broke a rib and we don't know about it. I think in the fight, Frank's defense is actually really good, considering the striking of Andrei Arlovski. He's a very crafty striker, and he really wields that right hand like a hammer. Frank did very well to avoid predominantly all the big shots, but once Arlovski was super tired in the second round, the fight pretty much just slowed down to a crawl. I mean, I like that one point where Frank Mir teased with a guillotine. It was a scramble, and instead of the guillotine, he opted to put Arlovski against the cage. I thought that was pretty sneaky and crafty. I think because Arlovski was expecting the guillotine, he wasn't focused on, oh shit, I'm getting backed up against the cage. But even then, like, it got reversed pretty quickly afterwards. Arlovski's biggest success was right at the end when he threw the left hand as a power shot as opposed to a jab, and he didn't focus so much on the right. But unfortunately, it was too little too late. What did you think? It was a really close fight. Do you think the right man had his hand raised at the end?
No, I don't, Cass. I really felt like Frank Mir won the first 2 rounds, and I thought the third round went to Arlovski, but I didn't think it was dominant to a point that it was like a huge scoring round for him. I just thought he won it, but it wasn't like a massive score that was going to adjust the entire thing. I really felt like Frank Mir won it. I was a little bit surprised. What about you?
I think Frank Mir won the second round. I think with that takedown and being on top, there was a lot of points in that fight where there just wasn't as much action. But the thing is, Arlovski was predominantly in the center of the cage. When they were standing, when they weren't up against the cage, Arlovski was on the center. He was pushing the action, even if it was just, throwing jabs and throwing big punches that weren't necessarily hitting. Frank Mir seemed really happy to be dodging those shots, and he wasn't really throwing that much offense of his own. And, in between rounds, Ricky Lundell gave Frank Mir a lot of praise. I think Frank Mir is one of those guys where he needs to be confident to do well, but I don't know. I think maybe he made Frank Mir think that he was winning the fight. There wasn't anything specific that I heard Ricky Lundell say other than, you're doing great and you're doing awesome. I really would have liked to see a little bit more direction. Maybe tell Frank Mir what he needs to do, because even like Frank Mir, I think, fought a very good defensive fight. I just don't think he did much in terms of damage to Arlovski, and I think that's why Arlovski got the win. It was a very close fight. It wasn't a robbery by any means, but I don't know. I really would have been fine with either man getting the win, but I do think Arlovski won.
It's interesting because, yeah, it was one of those fights. I have to say, like, I think stock went down on both men. It was just a terrible fight. Somebody tweeted out, and we retweeted this, whenever Fedor has doubts about how he'll perform in the UFC, all he needs to do is watch this fight and his spirits will be raised. And it was one of those things as well. I mean, something was wrong with Arlovski. We'll find out what it is soon. Who knows? Maybe we'll have him on the show. Maybe we'll find out through other media sources. But he was almost like Brendan Schaub, Andrei Arlovski, where he just sort of choked. And there were a lot of opportunities for him to capitalize. I mean, Frank Mir, he did a lot of stuff right, but his hands were down a lot. And one of the things that he did was when he parried and he moved his head around and did all of that, he would always bring his head down to one side. And a part of me was like, all right, Andrei Arlovski has got to be timing an uppercut because he does it every time. Frank Mir's striking, although it's improved, he still does the same stuff over and over. And you expect a guy like Andrei Arlovski, with the striking that he has, to feel him out for the first couple of rounds, but then really target in on the weaknesses that Frank Mir was presenting. And he had his arms down a lot. And I thought, all right, because Frank Mir has his arms down, Andrei Arlovski's going to knock him out at any moment. And I mean, it really looked like Mir had a lot more confidence in his boxing. I mean, his boxing has come along a lot, but it was so sloppy. It was such a sloppy fight. I think a lot of the people watching it were so disappointed. We expected a completely different fight. And Frank Mir has those fights. That's the thing. People forget that. Sometimes he gets a couple of big wins. He might break someone's arm. He might knock someone out. But in his history with the UFC, he's had some really, really crap fights. One of those fights is the Crow Cop fight. We all remember that fight. I mean, he's had other fights, like his fight with Daniel Cormier wasn't that much fun. He's had a whole bunch of those types of fights where it gets put up on the cage, and it just doesn't live up to the hype. This was definitely one of those fights. I mean, Andrei Arlovski looked very devastated in the post-fight speech that he gave when Joe Rogan was interviewing him, and for good reason. But at the end of the day, no winners there. And that's sort of one of the reasons why I thought putting these guys against each other was kind of stupid. Because here you have these guys who have stock that's rising, and you put them up against each other, and both of them look like shit. It's going to take a lot of wind out of their sails, and that's what it did today. So it was a little bit disappointing. The only thing I can say is, Frank Mir looks primed for a fight with Fedor if they do sign him. So that would be good. But it was really a fight that Frank Mir could have won, I thought. But yeah, it was one of those things that I don't think it's going to be a fight we'll be talking about in a couple of years. It's going to be forgotten as soon as we can.
Well, yeah, I'm hoping Frank Mir is healing up pretty quickly, and I'm hoping he's got a few plans to fly down to Australia, possibly in November, and I'm hoping that Fedor has the same thing on his mind. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later on the show, actually pretty soon. But you say you don't like this matchup, and I agree with you. I didn't like the matchup either, because now you've got two guys who had a lot of hype. I mean, who knows? Maybe they would have fought other people, and maybe they would have both brutally been knocked out, or maybe they would have won. Who knows? But either way, you've definitely got two guys that didn't really jump up the ladder. They both lost steam. But in saying that, a lot of people were saying Arlovski should be the one fighting Fabrizio Verdum or Cain Velasquez, either guy, whoever was going to hold that title, in this case Fabrizio Verdum. Do you think they kind of dodged the bullet? Because imagine if Arlovski fought Verdum.
Yeah. I mean, they might have dodged the bullet, and especially Frank Mir won that fight, which it looked like he did. It's like you got Mir versus Verdum. That would just be ridiculous. I mean, in a lot of ways they did, yeah. So I guess it worked out in that way, but how much has this set back Arlovski? It's like, how do you know what kind of Arlovski's going to show up? You don't know what kind of Arlovski's going to show up. The last one that fought Travis Brown was amazing. It was a huge fight. The way he was able to withstand the punches and finish Travis Brown just blew everybody's mind. But how guaranteed are we that that's the kind of Andrei Arlovski we're going to get? We just have no guarantees.
Well, I think beforehand the UFC were like, right, this guy's fireworks, another good win, and he's going to be fine for the title, and everybody's going to be crazy excited about it. Unfortunately, you can't really stick him in a title fight now. I feel like he came into the UFC, he fought Brendan Schaub at UFC 174. People were really down on Arlovski. They were happy that, hey, he's made it this far, he's come to the UFC, but after that fight, people were pretty pissed off. Then he knocked out Bigfoot. Everybody was happy about Arlovski. He did the sexy dancing in his post-fight celebration. Then there was the Travis Brown fight. A lot of momentum there, and I feel like a lot of that momentum has been washed away. Now people are like, oh, okay, he's the Brendan Schaub, Arlovski returning. So, look, it happens. Again, I don't know why he looked so small. I don't know whether he was sick or what happened. He said he didn't expect Frank Mir to come for 3 rounds. I'm not really sure what that means. I'm just going to chalk that up to Arlovski's English, because I don't know how you can expect a guy, as durable in terms of career longevity as Frank Mir not to stick around. I don't know whether Arlovski thought he was going to knock him out in the first or what.
It doesn't seem probable that. I mean, Jackson Winklejohns, Greg Jackson and Coach Wink. I mean, we know Coach Wink really well. He's a Submission Radio alumni. He's on the show almost every sort of month and stuff. And they would never approach a fight by saying, by underestimating anyone. They always prepare. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe mentally because look, Frank Mir did train with him for a while. Not a while, but for one fight. And maybe he sparred with him, and maybe he got the best of him every sparring session. And maybe he mentally thought, I'll go in there and knock him out. Whatever it was, yeah, I agree with you. You can't stick him in it. You can't. I think this is a good thing for Stipe, because I think if Stipe has a really good fight against Rothwell and he comes out smelling like roses, he'll be a lot closer to a title shot than Arlovski. But in saying that, it really does depend how this JDS Overeem fight goes. Because if one man has an impressive showing there, I'm guessing that will be the next guy who gets a title shot.
I think the division is wide open. I think whoever gets the next big knockout is going to be fine for the title. Unless they decide that, Cain deserves another rematch or Verdum deserves another rematch. Who knows? I'm sick of these rematches. I want someone else to get a shot. But yeah, heavyweight is wide open. Let's talk about the main event, and then we're going to talk about UFC 193 and all that's transpired since our little break. Demetrius Johnson, John Dodson. It was a rematch that I was really, really excited about. Probably more excited than Arlovski and Mir. What did you think about the fight, Dennis?
Well, it's funny because I actually thought at some points during the fight that it was like on fast forward, because they were moving around so quickly. I almost got dizzy sometimes because they moved around so quickly that it just didn't seem humanly possible to throw some of the stuff that they threw. It just blew my mind. watching the fight. It was a fantastic fight to watch from that perspective. I mean, Demetrius Johnson, some of the combinations that he throws, you don't realize it because he throws it so quickly, but then when they show it on like slow motion and you see how much detail he has in his combinations, it's absolutely mind-blowing. I can't believe it. Look, I thought the fight, he had a fantastic performance, Demetrius Johnson. John Dodson had some decent moments, but by the end he did get dominated. Demetrius Johnson just improving over and over and over again. Dodson just not being able to control the octagon, getting pushed back. Demetrius threw some great combinations, hit him with some good shots, and by the end of the fight, John Dodson's face is pretty bruised and battered. So I thought it was a very, very good performance from Demetrius Johnson, and a loss for John Dodson. And it's a tough one as well because I want to get your thoughts on the fight, Cass. But afterwards, when we talk about John Dodson, it's tough to see where he goes from here because he's going to be one of those guys, and there's a bunch of these guys, Chad Mendes, Uriah Faber, a bunch of these guys, Joseph Benavidez, where they're going to destroy a lot of the guys in the division, but it just doesn't look like they'll be getting another title shot anytime too soon because, Demetrius Johnson beats him again. But before we talk about that, what did you think of the fight?
I think that Demetrius Johnson and John Dodson, if this is Dragon Ball Z and they fuse together, they could very well go for the name Demetrius John Dodson. And I think that would be suiting. That's my 2 cents on the fight. Now it's UFC 193. Yeah, I found it interesting that there was a moment where John Dodson had Demetrius on the ground and he chose to let him stand up. I found that really weird because John Dodson wasn't getting the better of Demetrius on the feet. And I thought, well, if anything, try and win that round, stay on top of him. I don't know, use your ground and pound, stall the fight, do something to at least win that round. This is your opportunity, and he chose to let him up. I can't understand that decision. There was an interesting moment during the fight where Mighty Mouse, took a shot to the balls, and he didn't let Herb Dean intervene. I think he said something like, "Don't get involved," or "Stop right there," or something like that. I found this very pivotal because it sort of shows you the insight to what kind of fighter Demetrius Johnson is. Not only is he an extremely, extremely focused fighter, but he's a pressure fighter. I think the reason why I didn't want to let Herb Dean intervene or get 5 minutes or even get a second is because he gets better with momentum. The longer the fight goes, the more he drowns his opponent, and he just doesn't give him a second to breathe. And I think if he did take 5 minutes or a minute or even a second, John Dodson would have had time to mentally regroup. I think that's why I didn't want to take any breaks. And I find it fascinating just watching not only how Demetrius Johnson gets better as the fight goes, but you can see how much of a student of the game he is, the way that every single time he has a rematch, he does a lot better. Against Ian McCall, I think their first fight was really close. In Australia, arguably, Ian McCall won. And the second fight was just pure dominance. Joseph Benavidez, fairly close fight. The second one, Joseph Benavidez got viciously knocked out. So I expected pretty much the same thing to happen in this fight. Even though I was super excited and part of me was like, I don't know, what if Dodson catches him? What if he learns from his mistakes? I did expect Demetrius Johnson to beat him soundly in this second fight. There was a crazy moment where Demetrius threw a back elbow against the cage in the third round. He had Dodson up against the cage. He turned his whole body, threw a back elbow, and before you could even realize what happened, he was back to put him up against the cage. I just couldn't believe how fast that was. Dodson's takedown defense, insane that, he had great takedown defense throughout most of the fight. A lot of people complain that Mighty Mouse held him up against the cage too long. I think that every time Mighty Mouse had Dodson against the cage, she was constantly hitting him with shots, constantly hitting him with elbows. Mighty Mouse got caught with a big left straight when he threw that big flying knee. That was a pretty exciting moment. But by round 4, Dodson was pretty much in survival mode. He was looking to survive. He had almost zero output offensively. And then when the fight finished, Dodson put his hands up at the end of the round. I know that with Jackson Winklejohn's fighters, they train for everything, not just in the fight, but the mentality. And we all know that. We'll remember that moment with John Jones, Lyoto Machida, where Greg Jackson's like, go win some fans, go get some fans, go check on your opponent. And I think with putting your hands up at the end of the fight, I think in Jackson Winklejohn, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter how good or badly you did, they always train their fighters to always have your hands up. But by the end, it was a bit of a joke because Dodson just really didn't have any success in that fight.
Yeah, no, that's right, Cass. No hope there, and yeah, it's an interesting one because you almost go through the thought of, because, I can't recall what his corner was saying to him throughout the fight. I don't know if you can, but it's almost, did the corner really convey to him that he was losing the fight? Or was it just a part of something that they did? Whatever it was, the post-fight speech that Demetrius Johnson delivered, had a bit of sass in the post-fight speech. And obviously, he was on the show, spoke to us about how he had a conversation with Dave Lawler about how he's going to be more sort of outgoing. And we saw a little bit of that in this post-fight speech, a bit of sass from Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah, he's talking about his face and how it's prettier than a motherfucker. So it's good. It's good. That's going to be the headlines on pretty much all the MMA websites now.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a good thing it's legalized in Victoria. What's the latest headline? What's the latest MMA headline? He's prettier than a motherfucker. Oh, great.
The anti-MMA media, yeah, they'll be having a field day. They're like fighting and now swearing. What's next? What's next, you MMA hoodlums?
Yeah, it's a good thing that GSP wasn't sitting anywhere around because he's not good with that motherfucker translation. He gets a bit confused sometimes.
Yeah, he called me a motherfucker. I wasn't impressed by his language. What the question is, what do you do next with Demetrius Johnson? I mean, he's got to fight Cejudo next, right?
Yeah, I mean, Cejudo. Apart from Cejudo, I mean, I'm just looking at Ian McCall. He's already fought him.
Who's Cejudo fighting next? I think Formiga.
So he's got to win that.
I think he's got to fight the winner.
So, okay. So that makes sense. I mean, apart from that, in the division...
The unfortunate thing is, like, people aren't going to be nearly as... Yeah, sorry, I should check. Husi Formiga is fighting Henry Cejudo, all right? And that's in November. That's the week after UFC 193. I just don't think people are going to be as excited as a John Dodson versus Demetrius Johnson. This is going to be the big question for how well he can draw, because this is a pretty decent pay-per-view in my opinion. It was worth the money. There was some good fights on there. It's pretty up and down once it actually happened, but on paper, there was definitely some decent names. I'm curious to see how much Demetrius Johnson draws from this perspective. I mean, it doesn't... Look, I mean, I'm just saying this as far as what I'm curious about. As a fan, I don't really give a shit, to be honest. I think it's just more fun to play matchmaker and, pretend we run the UFC and stuff like that. I don't care. When Demetrius Johnson's fighting, I'm going to watch and I'm going to enjoy. But, to me, this is a really juicy, tantalizing matchup. There was bad blood there. John Dodson did a very good job of selling the fight. Demetrius Johnson was classy as usual. I don't know, Cejudo versus Formiga. I would much rather see Cejudo get the win and see if he can take on Demetrius Johnson. But what we've seen, Demetrius Johnson, he's gone up against great grapplers like Ali Bagutinov. He's gone up against great strikers, fast guys with knockout power like John Dodson. He's gone up against guys like Joseph Benavidez and Ian McCall, who in theory have it all and are very well-rounded. It's going to take... To beat Demetrius Johnson, it's going to take a guy who's not only well-rounded, but has that something extra. Pretty much anybody one-dimensional is not going to beat Demetrius Johnson. He'll always find a way to win, and he'll always find a way to break you down. That's my opinion. Yeah,
I mean, look, you make a good point. The John Dodson fight, that was the juiciest fight they could have made. And now that it's behind him, and he dominated him the second time, and doesn't look like you're going to really be able to do a third one anytime too soon. They're all out of juicy matchups. So, yeah, Cejudo, he's obviously... a lot of star potential, so I'm sure they're hoping he wins it. But, I don't think John Dodson's going to be a main event of any pay-per-view anytime too soon. Demetrius Johnson, sorry. He's probably going to be relegated to co-main event status until another big star is made. But, I mean, initially he was supposed to be a co-main event on this card anyway. So I think that might take some of the pressure off him in terms of pay-per-view buys and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, all right. We're talking about main events, co-main events, without any segue at all. I'm just going to jump straight into it. UFC 193. We're going to talk about that quickly before we let you guys go for another week. I mean, a lot of things happened, Dennis. I'll get you to sort of give us your initial thoughts, because since we've been away, a few switcheroos, hasn't there?
Yeah, a few switcheroos, guys. I mean, look, we were all excited for the Robbie Lawler Carlos Condit fight, which was going to be the main event of the show. But the week that we were gone, Lawler got a thumb injury and had to pull out of the fight. He's now been moved to a card in January. So that means Ronda Rousey was moved to UFC 193 as the main event. It's one of those things where a lot of hardcore MMA fans in Australia were really disappointed, and they conveyed this to us through social media. At the same time, there's a big casual fan base that, loves Ronda Rousey. And also Ronda Rousey is one of those athletes who's a once in a lifetime sort of person that you can watch. You don't know how long she's going to be around, and it's an opportunity for Australians to, watch possibly one of the greatest athletes when it comes to MMA and the best female athlete here in Australia. So it builds a lot of hype. Also added to the card, Cass, was a fight between Stefan Struve and Jared Rosholt, a fight that a lot of people thought didn't make much sense. So look, before we get into talking about Ronda Rousey and the newest edition, which was Joanna versus Valerie in the co-main event, so 2 title fights. I just want to get your thoughts on the Struve-Jared Rosholt fight. Do you think this fight makes sense for UFC 193? Do you think this is a good matchup?
Not really. I think if you're looking to add fights to UFC 193, you're looking at big names. I think we've definitely got quite a few names on this card now. Stefan Struve versus Jared Rosholt seems like a bit of a weird one. It's not really for hardcore fight fans. Jared Rosholt, his last fight, people didn't really love it. It was against Timothy Johnson. It got a lot of criticism. Stefan Struve, he's a guy, Stefan Struve has had a lot of exciting fights, but every now and then you get a Stefan Struve and you're just not sure who's going to show up. The fight against Nogueira, I didn't love it. And I think Jared Rosholt, I don't know, it seems kind of to me like a bit of a step down. You go from fighting a legend like Nogueira to fighting Jared Rosholt, who is on a bit of a streak, but I mean, he has the potential to take you down on the ground and grind you out. I think it might be tough against a guy like Stefan Struve. Who knows? These guys might go, and Stefan might abandon his ground game. Jared Rosholt might abandon his striking. They may go to war, and someone might get viciously knocked out, but that's really just hoping. I'm not really sure what the mindset is from the UFC's perspective for booking this fight. Neither guy's a massive name. Neither guy's exactly going to get people to go, oh, hey, I'm going to be one of those possibly 70,000 in the arena. I know you've got a few strong opinions on this one, Dennis. What do you think?
Yeah, it's just a matchup that doesn't make much sense. And, Jared Rosholt has a strong fan base in America. You can throw him on a card, from one of his home states. He's a big wrestling superstar. But here in Australia, he has absolutely no connection with the fans, which sort of doesn't make much sense, having him flying out all the way here to Australia to be on a show where fans, let's be honest, most of them don't really know who he is, because there'll be a lot of casual fans in attendance for that 70,000 people. I mean, there was a guy that was asking to be on the card called Matt Mitrione. Now, this is a guy that's well known by the public here in Australia because he was a part of the Ultimate Fighter, the heavyweight season, one of the best watched seasons, and obviously a big deal here in Australia. He's had a lot of great fights, and he's actually ranked over Stefan Struve. He's number 13. Struve is number 14. I mean, Cass, doesn't that make a bit more sense?
It makes a lot of sense, especially considering that Matt Mitrione is coming off that loss to Ben Rothwell. He had a lot of steam before that fight, and I think he needs to get some of that steam back. A potential win over Stefan Struve, I think that puts him in there. That would be a very exciting fight. Stefan Struve obviously has a wicked ground game. If it ends up on the ground, Matt Mitrione will be in trouble every second. While it's on the feet, I think Mitrione has the advantage, but both guys really, I mean, in my opinion, someone's going out. Someone's getting put to sleep. That's the kind of fight that Aussies get excited for. And, it's two guys they're not in the top 10 in the heavyweights, but they're still pretty decent names. Like Matt Mitrione's a guy I always tune in to fight. Stefan Struve, somewhat similar, but just, I don't know, getting put up against Jared Rosholt. Jared Rosholt not being such a big name, it just doesn't get me as excited for it. No. And again, a win over Mitrione for Stefan Struve, that's a big win that really puts a lot of momentum behind him. So I think that was the fight to make, and that's the one that would have made sense.
Yeah, and initially they were supposed to fight each other anyway, and Struve, passed out backstage. So there's that whole story there. And Mitrione is great at selling fights. He's going to jump into the press conference. He's going to jump into the news. He's going to say some stuff about Struve. There's a great dynamic there. And then if he wins, he's got a killer post-fight speech that he does. He's always an interesting guy. So it doesn't really make much sense from that perspective. And now, Cass, obviously Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm. Now, a lot of fans disappointed that Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit won't be on the card because that was going to be a certified battle. But also on the other side of things, there's 70,000 seats to fill out at Etihad Stadium, and now Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm is going to be the new main event. Just want to get your thoughts. What do you think this does for the card compared to the Lawler-Condit fight? Do you think this will fill more seats? Do you think there's a chance that now this event may be, I don't know, a sellout?
Well, again, this is just me putting my business hat on. Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit, everybody knows that was going to be a fantastic fight. Most likely. Unless it was like another Condit-Diaz fight or sometimes you just put so much expectations on a fight, it doesn't live up to expectations. But generally speaking, it was going to be a great fight, a great bloody battle. Ronda Rousey, I mean, that fight might be over in seconds. I do think Holly Holm will drag Ronda Rousey out a little bit longer, but like you mentioned, the casual fans, they may not know or appreciate how good Robbie Lawler is, or Carlos Condit for that matter. They're not massive names, and I mean, I want the record. I want Melbourne to hold that record. I want us to beat Canada. I love Canadians, but you know, you guys have had it for too long. I'm sorry, UFC 129. That's a long time ago. It's time for the torch to be passed on, and I want Melbourne to hold that record. So for that reason, I'm happy that Ronda Rousey here. I mean, it makes it that much more of a spectacle. Like to have a record stadium show and Ronda Rousey, it just creates that much more hype. And like, there'll be people at this show. I'm not saying that the whole crowd will be comprised of them, but there'll be people at the show. There'll be like grandmas and you know, girls who may not even care about MMA, but they like Ronda Rousey. There'll be the crowd who's like, oh yeah, I saw her in a movie. I saw her in Expendables. Or isn't it that chick from Fast and Furious? And well, wow, she's actually fighting here. Okay, I'll come down. I might get some cheap seats. You're not going to get people doing that for Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit. It's a lot harder to convince people who aren't MMA fans, oh, hey, there's going to be a really great fight, a bloody scrap. It's like, okay, yeah, but who cares? I don't know the people. So looking from a casual fan's perspective, or maybe even people who aren't into MMA, you're going to get a lot more asses in seats now that Ronda Rousey's in town. And again, like we mentioned, a Ronda Rousey, you can have her on the news. You can have her on, the Project or the 7 p.m. Project. You can have her on a whole bunch of, who knows, maybe Rove will come out of retirement and have a special just interview Ronda Rousey. She can do a whole bunch of shows. I don't see Robbie Lawler or Carlos Condit necessarily doing as much media or being as successful at it. You know, I don't see them having their own segment on Better Homes and Gardens, you know, on how to make brioche burgers, but I can see Ronda Rousey doing it. You know?
Absolutely, Cass. I mean, let me read this out. Cain Velasquez versus Big Nog. Vanderlei Silva versus Michael Bisping. George Citropoulos versus Joe Stevenson. Ryan Bader versus Keith Jardine. Krokop versus Anthony Prosh. This was UFC 110, and that was an attendance of 17,831, a sellout, a huge event. But if you compare that to the card that UFC 193 was previously before the Ronda Rousey edition, you start scratching your head thinking, look, it was a sellout in Sydney, but that was 17,000 people. How are they going to get 70,000 people with a card that's arguably worse than UFC 110? You know, it wasn't going to happen. So now that Ronda Rousey's on the card, the UFC have a better chance of filling out that stadium. But at the same time, it's still going to be a big struggle. The card is missing a couple of marquee fights, maybe one huge fight. And if Fedor gets announced on the card, that could be that one big fight that puts it over. But at the moment, it does seem like a few fights need to be added, even to the prelims. What do you think, though, Cass, about the new co-main event on the card? There's going to be 2 title fights now here in Melbourne. What do you think about Joanna fighting here in Melbourne?
Well, I think it's a good thing. I think especially considering that Joanna is potentially another big star that the UFC really wants to groom to, you know, be a big star. So you put her on a big show, a massive show, a spectacle that everybody's going to tune into, regardless of how many people actually rock up in Australia. Everybody around the world will tune in. So if you want to show off your star, you put Joanna below Ronda Rousey. I think with Ronda Rousey, there's every chance that this fight may last 30 seconds. And I'm not discounting Holly Holm. Like I said, I think it's going to be a decent fight, but just looking at history, it may last 16 seconds, 30 seconds, and that's why people will be a bit shitty thinking, well, what did I spend my money on? But with Joanna against Valerie, this is going to be, I would say it's probably going to be a nice war. And even if Joanna ends up destroying Valerie, which there's no guarantees she will, it's going to be a bloody fight, and it's going to not necessarily be what we expected from Carlos Condit and Robbie Lawler. I mean, hey, who knows? But I think it's going to be a fight where people are going to get more bang for their buck. You know, with Ronda Rousey, you get the star, you get the spectacle. With Joanna, you get a brutal fight. We saw what she did to Carla Esparza. We saw what she did to Jessica Penne. I mean, I think it's going to be a similar fight. I think it's going to be a fun, brutal fight, and the Aussie fans, the people who crave the bloodlust, I think that's where they're going to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it can't replace it. And a lot of fans kind of angry, but let's not forget, you know, Lawler got injured. This didn't replace the fight. Who knows? Maybe if he never got injured, Maybe actually, I doubt they would have put Ronda Rousey on this card, but let's say they kept it as the co-main event. Obviously, that would have been great, but it was an injury. So they didn't just go, oh, we're going to get rid of this fight and put Ronda Rousey here. It was a great replacement. I think we're all pretty lucky we were able to get Ronda Rousey as a replacement. So overall, the card looks decent. There needs to be a lot more fights added to the prelims. At the moment, there's not that many fights. Mark Hunt versus Bigfoot Silva. Cass, final thing. A lot of people saying if Fedor does get added to the card, they want to see Mark Hunt versus Fedor and Bigfoot Silva being pushed down to fighting with Stefan Struve. What would you think if something like that happened?
Well, okay, so now you've got Stefan Struve and Bigfoot Silva. You've got two big names, or decent names. I'd be much happier with that than Jared Rochat. No offense. I'm sure Jared Rochat's like, dude, I'm going to be fighting in Australia. This is huge. So I feel like a dick. But just from a fight fan perspective, I'd rather see Stefan Struve versus Bigfoot Silva. Bigfoot, he's fallen down the ladder quite a bit. Stefan Struve's trying to make his way back up. I think it's a fight that makes sense. And Mark Hunt, I mean, geez, I'd give anything to have Fedor in Australia. I mean, if we get Ronda Rousey, we get Joanna, we get Fedor. We've got Mark Hunt, Michael Bisping. Like, now you're cooking with gasoline. That's a star-studded card. But, I mean, there's 13 fights already, including the official ones and the announced ones. I think we'd be lucky to get one more fight. I'll read out what we've got so far, right? We've got Ryan Benoit versus Ben Nguyen. We've got Richie Vass versus Danny Martinez. We've got Stefan Struve versus Jared Rochat. We got Brendan O'Reilly, Badger O'Reilly against William Macario. Richie Walsh against Steve Kennedy, Daniel Kelly versus Ricardo Abreu, John Vellante versus Anthony Perosh, Carl Noak, Peter Sabota, Jake Matthews, Akbar Ariola, giggity, Michael Bisping versus Robert Whittaker, Mark Hunt versus Bigfoot Silva, Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Valerie Letourneau, Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm. How's my pronunciation, guys? Let me know in the comments below. The names that stick out to me, you've got Ronda Rousey, obviously. You've got Joanna. You've got Mark Hunt. You could say Bigfoot, Bisping, Jake Matthews. Those are the main big names, and Robert Whittaker. Everyone else, and this is not about quality of fighters, but we're talking about names who will draw people. I do feel like maybe you need one more person. I think maybe one more person is missing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. And as people saw in the Go Big press conference, Dana White still didn't want to say anything about Fedor. He doesn't have any news about Fedor yet. So I wonder what it could mean. But I'm hoping over the next couple of weeks we're able to figure something out. Anyway, me and Casper will stay on top of it, Submission Radio. You can follow us on Twitter and check us out on Facebook. And we will be updating you as soon as we find anything out. There will be a press event coming up soon. Me and Cass will be there and we'll be asking the hard questions, trying to get more information for you. So you can look forward to that. But Cass, with that, another exciting week of Submission Radio and a good return show. It's good to be back.
Oh, it feels great to be back. And yeah, like you mentioned, there will be a press event here. Dana, I don't know if you know, but Dana White will be in town. So that's probably if ever a time there was a good reason to subscribe to the channel, subscribe now, because I think within the next 2 weeks we'll have an interview with Dana White, and there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of things we want to ask the man, and yeah, like you said, Dennis, it feels great to be back. We'll definitely be back next week. Before we pull the plug on the show for this week, any last words for the fans?
Yeah, unofficial movie review time. I watched Straight Outta Compton.
Hey, you saw it?
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. I think it's a movie that a lot of people are like, well, I'm not a fan of the NWA. I'm not a fan of Dr. Dre. Don't really care about these guys, but they have a fascinating story. Now, you and me, Cass, we're big fans of NWA, obviously, big fans of Dr. Dre and the music that they've done, Eazy-E. So for us, obviously it's a pleasure to watch. But there was so many things I did not know about the guys, so many stories that, had no idea happened. Obviously, Ice Cube in there as well, his son reprising the role as Ice Cube. And we saw him in a concert here in Melbourne last year, actually. He performed on stage with Ice Cube, but that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm saying. Basically, yeah, it's a great movie. It goes, be prepared because it does go a little bit long. It has been the top movie in America for 3 weeks running now, but it's certainly worth the coin to go watch it in the cinema. It's an emotional journey. There's a lot of great stories. And if anything, when you walk out of the cinema and you do listen to the classics from the NWA and even Death Row Records, there's a lot more appreciation for the work because you know the stories behind it. So definitely a fantastic movie to check out. And it just shows you, there's a lot of different people with knowledge. There's people that go to university and there's people with street knowledge, and that's an actual thing. So it's something you can even take the kids to just to show them, the power of...
Really?
Yeah, take the kids to it.
Violence.
Show them the power of determination that you can make anything happen. But maybe then talk about the second part of the movie of things they should avoid once they get to that power position. It's great. They should show it to guys in the UFC.
I'm all for exposing the kids to stuff and making lessons of it. Man, I always love NWA. Been an NWA fan for years and years. I heard there was some controversy because they didn't show a few things in the movie, like Dr. Dre's abuse and some of the other guys' abuse against women and D-Barnes and things like that. But you know what? I might just drag the missus to it. I'm sure she won't be excited about anything because let's be honest, she's not excited about any movies, but I'll drag her over. I love my missus, but she's just the worst when it comes to movie picks. I'll be like, let's see Edge of Tomorrow. She's like, who's in that? I'm like, Tom Cruise. She's like, nah, I don't like him. I'm like, why? She's like, well, I just don't. I'm like, well, you're an idiot. And then we see it. She's like, I love it. I'm like, let's see Jack Reacher. She's like, who's in it? I'm like, who cares? Let's just see it. Great movie. John Wick. She's like, what is it about? I'm like, Keanu Reeves. She's like, I don't like it. I'm like, well, there you go. Like, all these movies you see, they're great. And now she's like stuck on Tom Cruise. She's got Tom Cruise marathons. She knows Tom Cruise better than I do.
Yeah, he did a great lip sync battle with Jimmy Fallon. But yeah, what I do is I lure the girlfriend with popcorn and free tickets.
That's the trick. That's what you do.
Lies. I do it in the dark so she doesn't know where I'm taking her. But I put a blindfold on her and bang, take it off. The movie's about to start. But Tyron Woodley, actually, he's in the movie as well. He's an extra, but you actually see him quite a bit. He's a part of Ice Cube's posse. So check it out. He's driving the car. He's in the back looking mean. If he looks that mean against Johny Hendricks, you never know what's going to happen in that fight. So definitely look out for him.
Apparently he was going to, like, when he got the role, they wanted him to shave his beard. And I think there was a little bit of a, like, I don't really want to, but if you really want me to. And somehow the beard shaving got delayed. And then the last second, I think, like, he went to his trailer and they were going to shave his beard off. And then someone was like, wait, stop the beard shaving. And they're like, you know what, keep the beard. You're going to have a different part. And he actually got a bigger role in the movie than he was originally supposed to. So the guy who didn't have a beard took that original role, and they bumped up Tyron Woodley. And they're like, you can keep your beard, you'll just play a different guy now.
Yeah, and that's when Tyron Woodley became Suge Knight.
Yeah, apparently they're going to do a sequel, Death Row. It's going to have Snoop Dogg and Suge Knight and, all those other guys. Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, probably not. Anyway, that's it, guys. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and at Submission AUS, and we'll catch you next week.